Go. Good evening. This is the time and place for the Dixon Unified School District Board of Trustees meeting. Seeing no public in the room, there will be no comment on closed session, so I will adjourn to closed session. Thank you. It's from closed session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Roll call. Lloyd?
Present.
Jewel?
Present.
Catlin?
Yes, here.
Melissa, are you here yet? Okay, hearing nothing, and I am here. Notice to the public. Okay, so for those of you who have not participated in one of these meetings, since we are doing this over Zoom, the board president will call for comment at the appropriate time, and you can then use your Zoom reactions to raise your virtual hand to be recognized to speak. Non-scheduled agenda items will be introduced under section 10 on the agenda. Speakers may be limited to 5 minutes per topic at the discretion of the board president. In the interest of conducting efficient meetings and ensuring that they are as structured as possible while being held under the Zoom format, participants are requested to turn off their cameras unless making a public comment. Participants are not required to use their camera during public comment, but are encouraged to do so. Additionally, participants in the meeting will be allowed one opportunity to make public comment on any agenda item. The board president will not recognize speakers seeking to make any additional public comment on any given agenda item after they have already made public comment. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9324B, the district may tape, film, stream, or broadcast any open board meeting. The recording or broadcast may capture images or sounds of those attending the meeting. Any district recording may be erased or destroyed 30 days after the meeting. Recordings made at the direction of the board during a meeting are public records and upon request shall be made available for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Okay, and I see Melissa has entered the meeting. She is now here. We have the full board present. Okay, recognition of guests and presentations.
None this evening.
And any correspondence?
None.
Okay, so consent agenda. Do we have any board questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have any public questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Kathleen has her, well, sorry,
I'm sorry, what was that, Mark?
seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so seeing no public comment on the consent agenda, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to adopt.
We have a motion to adopt. Do we have a second?
I'll
I
second.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Motion passes. We have no items pulled from the consent agenda, so on to stakeholder communications. Do we have anyone from the Citizens Oversight Committee?
Did not see Tad in the meeting.
Okay. Do we have anyone from DTA that would like to make an employee association report?
Seeing none at this time.
Okay. Do we have anyone from SEIU who would like to make an employee association report?
Seeing none.
Do we have anyone from any of the parent associations that would like to make a report?
None from the parent association.
Okay, I see Kathleen Burrows has her hand up. Kathleen, do you have an employee association report?
I don't, but I think I may have missed my window on general public comment, and I was wondering if I could be afforded the opportunity to make a non sequitur public comment now.
That's next. We have not gotten to it.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so seeing no parent association reports, we'll move on to public comment. Persons wishing to introduce a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district and not on the agenda may do so at this time. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. Comments may be limited to 5 minutes per person to a maximum of 25 minutes per topic unless extended by the board president. Comments are to be directed exclusively to the governing board, and the board president shall determine who, if anyone, may respond to the comments or questions of the speaker. Okay, Ms. Burrows, you are on.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking tonight to ask the school district's governing board and Superintendent Dolan for help in its efforts in attracting highly qualified teachers to Dixon Unified. Today, some of UC Davis's School of Education directors have proposed that the university suspend its teacher education program without specific data for doing so. If UC Davis suspends its teacher education program, it will have a deleterious effect on Dixon Unified, as many Dixon teachers, veteran and new alike, are proud UC Davis School of Education alumni. 12 out of 31 teachers at CA Jacobs, myself included, are graduates of UC Davis's teacher education program. Additionally, each year Dixon Unified hosts elementary and secondary student teachers from UC Davis, allowing these student teachers to work with our wonderful students and ultimately pique their interests in teaching in a Dixon school. I ask you, Governing Board and Superintendent Dolan, to please contact UC Davis administrators and implore them not to suspend the university's teacher education program. Please help Dixon Unified continue to attract highly qualified teachers to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Luke, can I just briefly respond to that?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, we've been talking about this, Kathleen, over the last just little while, and it's a potentially devastating blow, not only to Dixon Unified, but really school districts across the area. The program wasn't what it is now when I finished it in 1988, but my son just finished it and is in his master's component right now. You know, as Mr. Giramani said earlier today, the first and best place we look for new teachers is from UC Davis. So we have expressed our level of concern on this, including to one of our legislators in the area who has a high interest in it. And I know both from formal quarters such as school districts and elected officials, and then the informal. My son, again, finished the credential in June, currently in the master's component. The alumni world has just absolutely blown up. So yeah, it would be a huge loss for Dixon and the region if that program does not admit students. And I know they've got work to do to revise and adapt perhaps for modern times, but it's a rather stark choice to shut it down for a year. So I appreciate you speaking up on it, and we're on board.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else have any open public comment not otherwise on the agenda?
Seeing none.
Okay, so let's move on to item 11A, information discussion and action, approval of section B, governance and administration of the local plan of the special education local plan area SELPA.
Great, thank you, Luke. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Andrew Ownby, who is the assistant superintendent for the Solano County SELPA. He works out of the Solano County Office of Education, but has his own separate little world, more or less, that he gets to oversee. Andrew is a good colleague and a friend at Dixon Unified with the support that he brings to us through his role. He's here tonight, and Mark, I'm going to need to share my screen if I may. He's here tonight to talk to us about this really fascinating, easy to read, a fun document for everybody from the local plan for the SELPA, the special education local plan area. And the dynamic around it is a particular section that does require board approval. And so Andrew's going to give us a quick presentation on that as soon as I get his thing up here on the screen. And
are you ready? You got to be a little faster.
We appreciate you, Andrew, being here, and the show is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Superintendent Dolan, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, for having me here this evening. I'll just holler next for the next slide if we need to, if that works. My goal is to try and keep the presentation to 3 to 5 minutes, but to also make sure I have time to answer any questions you all may have. I like to start a presentation like this with just reminding folks that special education or services for kids with disabilities is really a new thing in much of the world. It's only 45 years old in the United States. California was first adopted the Master Plan for Special Education in 1974. And then the feds followed suit with the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, which was revised multiple times, and it was its second iteration was the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA. Most recently, it was reauthorized in 2004, and it's supposed to be reauthorized again by the feds, but that has taken a back seat. Part of that original master plan for special education, it required that by 1977, so 3 years after the plan was created, all districts and county offices had to form consortiums in geographical regions of sufficient size to provide for the services of the kids in their region. Each region is called a special ed local plan area, or SELPA, which is what we refer to them as. Why did they do that? Well, think about it this way. If you're in the legislative analyst's office said it best in a video when they were trying to explain SELPAs to everyone. And they said, if you had a district of 1,000 kids, you would probably have one student on average who's blind, and another student, one student who is deaf, and possibly 2 students with physical impairments. Each of those disability types require specialists to serve them. And most districts of 1,000 kids in size can't afford to hire 3 separate teachers just to serve 4 kids. And we still have districts that are super small. Sierra County, by example's total school population, according to DataQuest, is around 400. And then on the other hand, LA County has 1.4 million kids. So SELPAs vary widely across the state. Next slide. So who are the member districts of Solano County? You might think it's everyone in Solano County, but it's not. Back when SELPAs were formed, Vallejo was the big school district in the state or in the region because they had Mare Island. So they formed a single district SELPA back then. And all of the other districts in the County Office of Education formed Solano County SELPA. So those are the member districts of Solano County SELPA. Next slide. Whoa.
There we go.
So what does the SELPA do for districts? Well, the first thing we're the first line of support for directors and special education administrators of our member districts. We're the first person they call when they need support. You can see here we provide case level support for districts because special education can be very technical and challenging. Starting last year, we started mentoring new teachers because we saw that as a real need, and we continue that this year. In fact, we provide a phenomenal amount of professional development to all of our member districts, and we've been sending staff to in person and now virtually the Dixon special education teacher meetings to provide technical support and training for all of the staff, elementary through high school. We also manage for all of our member districts all of the non-public school contracting, billing, and monitoring, which has become this year after Assembly Bill 1172 passed after the death of a student at Guiding Hands in El Dorado County. We have a massive amount of monitoring that if we didn't do it, each of our member districts would have to do it separately. So it saves a significant amount of time and resources of the districts because we manage that for everybody. We also maintain a pool for residential placements. Those can be extremely expensive when they're necessary. So we maintain a pool for that because one residential placement would be a massive financial blow to some of our smaller districts. And we maintain a legal defense pool and a legal education pool to support our administrators when they need help beyond what we can provide. Next slide. I know I put this slide in here because I know board members and superintendents and the public have a vast amount of things to deal with. So we practitioners of special ed, we seem to think that everybody should know all the things that are in our heads sometimes, and that's we know that's not realistic. So we created about 2 years ago a website that maintains all of our public documents, links to all of our meetings, all of our schedules, including our Council of Superintendents meeting. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Our advisory body to that council, which is the Governance and Finance Committee, and our Community Advisory Committee, which Dixon has 2 members sitting on at this time. So as I mentioned earlier, every SELPA is unique. And how do SELPAs operate? Well, we operate at the direction of our governance council. We're not just out there rogue doing our own thing. We take direction from the superintendents. The governing body of the SELPA is the superintendent from each of our member districts. They are essentially my boss, just like you are the supervisor for Superintendent Dolan. Next slide. So why are we here today? Well, in 2018, the Omnibus Trailer Bill, Education Omnibus Trailer Bill, required the Department of Education to create new forms for revising all local plans. It required every SELPA to revise their local plans. And isn't it about time? Because many SELPAs hadn't touched their local plans in 15+ years, including this SELPA. I've been here for about 3.5 years. At this point in time, I've been here for about 3.5 years. And after my first year in, we started working on a revision to get it up to date. And then this trailer bill dropped right in the middle of that process. So we were already about halfway through the process when the state was ordered to develop forms. I will acknowledge that the state was about 9 months late on their timeline to develop forms. This whole process was supposed to be done by the end of last school year. As you're all aware, crazy things have happened since then. Timelines have all shifted. So this law created a requirement that we review the local plan every 3 years, and it requires posting on the websites of all the member LEAs, et cetera, because the state really recognized that prior to this bill, a lot of people didn't know what a SELPA was and didn't know what services they provide, which is part of the reason we had created a website, and we're working on making everything as transparent as possible. So that's a little bit about why we're here. The state requires every SELPA to revise their local plans and use the new adopted state forms. Next slide. As I mentioned, we'd been working on this for about a year prior to that. And then through the last school year, we really kicked it up a notch, and we held 20 meetings. You'll see on the next couple of slides. We held about 20 different meetings for input on the local plan. All of them, not all of them, but most of them were public meetings to where they were agendized, and we took public comment if any was made. We reviewed the local plan pretty much monthly with our Community Advisory Committee, which includes which includes staff members who provide special ed, general ed staff members, and parents and interested community members. We reviewed it with the special ed directors as well, and we reviewed it with the Governance and Finance Committee and the Council of Superintendents on a regular basis so that they would always be informed of our work along the way. If you want to hit the next slide. There you go. So there's the schedule of all the meetings we held where we agendized and reviewed the local plan draft documents. Next slide. So there's the final review and approval process. On May 28th, through one of our first virtual meetings at the ZELPA, well, it's the second or third, I think, the Council of Superintendents approved the governance plan. Originally, when CDE had rolled out these new documents and rolled out the process, they had directed us to go to our governance councils and get all of our plans approved before June 30th of 2020, submit them to the state, and then over the next year, go to our school districts and seek approval from each of the boards. And when that was done, submit those to the state. Well, around April or May, state changed its direction, and they said, that's the process. You go ahead and get approval from your governance council. And then before you submit it to us, you have to go to each of the member districts to have them ratify or adopt your local plan. And that is why we are here today. So our local plan, vetted for the last couple of years through all of the stakeholder groups as required, is before you this evening for your approval.
Great, thank you. Any board questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your work on this. Any public questions or comments?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the governance and administration of the local plan of the special education local plan area.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd,
Aye.
Jewel,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Catlin,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Thank you all for your time. Have a great evening.
Andrew, appreciate, I think we're your first district to make this appearance, right? So,
You are, and I would happily take feedback on my presentation. Shorter, about right. You
no,
guys can let me know later.
spot on. I think
Real
providing
good.
some reinforcement of some of the basics around SELPAs and special ed, very smart to do. Andrew has taken this local plan. I don't know the half of the work involved, but Andrew and members of his team and all the various stakeholders really did a super job with this. So, Mr. Ownby, thank you.
You guys,
Say hello to the family, and we'll talk to you soon.
thank you all.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to item 11A2, John Knight Middle School renovation project, furniture and equipment, moving services, request for proposal and request for approval of selected company.
Yes, so happy to welcome Lee Coop, who works with schools, School Site Solutions. Sorry, I was going to call you School Services there, Lee. Lee is one of the consultants who has been assisting us through this whole renovation project over at the John Knight Middle School campus. And in particular, she's here tonight to talk about moving and then a little bit on timeline as well. So Lee, thank you.
Okay, 1 second, Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt before you get started. If anyone is on who has their camera on that is not presenting, I'd like to ask that you please turn off your camera. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Lee.
Thank you, Luke. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Dolan, members of the public, staff, teachers, and everyone listening in. My name is Lee Coop with School Site Solutions. And as Superintendent Dolan said, we are assisting the district with various facility projects. In particular, this one is the John Knight Middle School renovation project. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the continuing activity surrounding furniture equipment in the long process of having very important things happen when you renovate an old school and you need to furnish it and you need to move an entire school from one facility to a new facility and it becomes a new school. So it's a long involved process and you've seen it through the way. This now as we are on to moving services. So this is talking about moving various items. It could be materials, books, supplies, some equipment, some furniture from C.A. Jacobs to John Knight Middle School. Mostly we have purchased and are in the process of purchasing. With your approval, we have gone ahead and we have 2 vendors now getting all the new furniture and equipment ready to go and ordered, and that's in process. So now we're talking about the existing stuff that's at C.A. Jacobs. This includes items in teachers' classrooms, including their books and other materials, and also a myriad of other things that you can imagine are in a school that should be packed up and moved. So we went out for a request for proposal for moving services, and 6 people, we contacted 6 companies in the area and sent the RFP, the request for proposal out to them. We had a site walkthrough of C.A. Jacobs and on last week, and 4 of those companies responded, which I was very happy about. And we walked through the school with the principal and assistant principal to have them look at what we are asking them to move. So they marked down everything, the count, and any asked questions, and we clarified information. Then I did issue 2 addendum 1 and 2, which clarified some of the issues. And then they were asked to provide a quote if they were interested on this Tuesday. All 4 companies did so. And I was also happy about that, to get that competitive number in there. So now in the original update that you had a copy, you saw a copy of the request for proposal that was sent out, and also what had happened up until we had to post the memo. Now an update is provided for you, and it's on the web as well in the board agenda. And that's an update as of yesterday. So of those 4 quotes, you see the companies there, and Metropolitan, Mid-Cal, Quality Moving, and Valley Relocation. I gave the lump sum prices, but really the lump sum price is one piece of the entire package. We asked them, we told them that the acceptance of and recommendation for an award would not be based solely on fees. This is not a bid for construction. That is not a low bid situation. What you look at is all the variables that can occur with companies. And they were asked to provide information on, with references, their fee structure, the issues around boxes and labels. Do they provide ability to rent the boxes or purchase the boxes? And how much would that be? How much are their pickup and delivery charges? How much are their services for post-move services? Say, for example, we need some extra moving services after the original move. So there's a myriad of services that we ask them to quantify and to talk about. So you have the 4 quotes there, and I just merely gave you the lump sum because it is a sort of a spreadsheet of information that goes into it. So in looking at all those factors, including the breadth of experience that the companies had with school districts, whether they responded to the questions, answered the questions that we asked, in the insurance issue, price of the boxes, the lump sum and how they would price other services, description of the specific scope of work, and generally how did they respond? How were their proposals as far as clarifying what they would do for us, and if it showed that they did have experience with school district moves such as this. Based on all of those factors, we have recommended to the superintendent, and we're bringing forward to you the recommendation of Valley Relocation. And we would ask for the approval of that we go ahead and execute a contract with them. And if that contract cannot be executed for any reason, for example, if something sticks with insurance or something where they can't meet all our terms and conditions, then we move to the second one, and that recommendation is Mid-Cal, and that's Mid-Cal Moving and Storage. So that would be our recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Great, thank you, Lee. Any
You're
board
welcome.
questions?
Where are these companies located?
As per in the memo, Metropolitan's in Fairfield and Benicia. These are all pretty local. Mid-Cal is in Stockton, Quality's in Dixon, and Valley Relocation, their corporate headquarters is in Concord, but they have offices in Sacramento is probably the closest one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board questions? So Lee, my question is for lack of a better term, the backup company, Mid-Cal, their bid was about $1,000 less. I'm just curious, what did Valley provide that you guys felt was worth that extra $1,000? Is it their experience or some service they're willing to provide that Mid-Cal is not?
And yes, and I figured this would be asked. Again, it's based on a calculation of a number of factors. Valley has a lot of experience, and they listed all of those things. In fact, in your packet, their proposal is included, and you can see their current 2 references that we asked for, plus the list of all the other school districts. In addition, I would say their proposal was clearer than the other ones as far as what they would do, and including a pre-move walk with the project manager. And it gave us a certain amount of a level of clarification of what that scope was, what that included. So I think it was a very close decision, actually. Those two, you can see the price spread, those two were the two lowest. So, so even though Valley was $1,000 more, if we look at the price per box and some of the other costs, I think we'll end up about even, and so the other factors come into play.
Yeah, and I see they listed something like 16 school projects and indicated they've been doing campus relocations for Vacaville for 12 years and Oakland for 30 years. So like you say,
Yeah.
very experienced. Okay.
And Mid-Cal is in the Lodi, Stockton area, and they do a lot of work for some districts down there. But with all the factors, again, I would say it was a tight decision, but I'm recommending Valley relocation.
Okay, thank you. Any other board questions or comments? Okay, let's go out for public questions and comments then. Do we have any public questions or comments on this item?
I'm seeing none. Well,
Okay,
there's one right there, DJ Bowden.
Hi there. It's not really a question for Lee, I guess, but just as a teacher who's been involved with a move before, and actually it might have been Valley because you said they helped in Vacaville. I used to work in Vacaville, but I just know it's like very stressful time for a teacher to have all their things being touched, especially if you're type A like myself. So I guess I just like to hear from Superintendent Dolan about how just, ensuring that the teacher's workload in terms of packing and moving will be affected, and just, ensure that it's a safe and stress-free move for people who are reporting to their site.
okay, thank you.
Good question.
Hold
Yeah.
on, Brian, we have
Sorry.
another. hand up. So let's-
Sorry, Luke. Yep.
That's okay. I think Pinky is next.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my question. So what's the timeline on this? And also, if once you guys accept the bid, are they going to keep it if there are other delays? Are they going to maintain that bid? Or if there's a time delay again, are they going to still maintain whatever the lowest bid was that they gave you, or quote, I guess?
Great, thank you, Pinky. Okay, Brian, do you want to address David's question first? And then
Sure, and Lee can, in some ways, these two questions are related, I think, when you say Lee, yeah. So I have been a part of two moves in Dixon Unified School District, and if memory serves me correct, actually Valley relocation did both the moves for us. So the most recent one was when we moved from Old Dixon High to New Dixon High, which happened in the summer of 2007. And then I was also part of when Sylvieville Elementary School was closed. I was part of that move. That campus was relocated into Anderson. Those two school sites were combined. So I absolutely concur that this process is a stressful one for staff. All levels of staff, from the superintendent of schools all the way through every other position at a school site. There's a whole bunch of unknowns, especially when you're going to either a new facility or facility you haven't had the opportunity to be in yet. So the next item that Lee is going to touch on is the renovation project, furniture, and equipment timeline. And included in there, correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, is some of the details around the work that we will be doing with staff in the coming months to prepare them for this move. What I will say is that the variables around being in distance learning and not everyone being required to work on campus at this point in time is one that, and especially depending what happens over the next couple of months, is one which can certainly complicate our efforts here. How will a room get packed? How will a teacher's personal items, and that's really what we talk about, removed, all the other materials would be moved by the movers, packed and moved by the mover, packed by the employee, moved by the movers, right? So if we have someone who's out on leave or out with reasonable accommodations or such, the process of getting their materials packed, labeled, and ready for move is a much more difficult one that we'll be crossing that path here very soon. So I think if we can hang on, and thank you to your question, this bid, and I don't believe that currently it's scheduled for 2 days between December 18th and December 30th. And I would have to believe, and Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, that if those dates need to be adjusted, we obviously would work with Valley Relocation on making those changes, right? No new contract would be required.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So my
I would
suggestion,
just add,
yeah, please.
Yeah, I would, thank you, Brian. I would just add, yes, in the next agenda item, we'll talk about the timeline and details, and I will, as per what you said, Superintendent Dolan, I will include the details on teachers, but there's a lot of orientation, training, instructions, and process. And no, we will not need to do a new contract. We'll be putting that into the contract that this lasts for X number of months. And beyond that, it depends on what we end up getting, but beyond that, it becomes unreasonable with inflation and labor costs. But I expect that it would be in play for the time that we need it. Yes.
Okay.
And the contract indicates, although those timeframes for delivery of the boxes are in December, that they're going to do other things with delivery of the boxes to CAJ and stuff earlier than that, obviously.
Yes.
Yes, what you're seeing in front of you is a proposal. That is not the contract. This item is for you guys to authorize us to execute a contract based on this proposal. So we put in the district's terms and conditions, which are a lot more detailed about the liability and things like that. And also I have talked with Valley Relocation about the flexibility on dates. They put that in there as an example. And I think the big thing about that is they believe it will be a 2-day move. That's what I also wanted to know that. You notice that on their proposal, it says a Friday and Saturday. That's not necessarily true. I said, districts don't work on Saturdays usually. So they said, well, we do. So I just want to let you know, if you try to get us on Sunday, it's overtime. I said, we will not be doing that. Yeah, so that was just that. And they are flexible on the dates and some of the other things that I spoke to them about, just to clarify, and we will be able to work with them. I think the experience I've had in my previous life as a facilities director with them is good. And I think that they were successful at Dixon Unified in past projects as well. I can't, like Brian said, I can't say that it's stress-free at all. It's not. But we try to make it the smoothest process possible.
So the dates in the contract won't necessarily mirror the dates in the RFP exactly, but they'll provide the boxes and everything to the school sufficiently ahead of time for everything to get loaded up properly and moved.
Correct. And in fact, in the RFP, it said the week of the 23rd. In my addendum number 1, in fact, I backed it up a week and they said no problem whatsoever. So they said, what you need, boxes and labels, we'll get them to you. The other issue around movers is that flexibility of, okay, here's the initial dump of boxes and labels. We do orientation, get those distributed. Oh, we need more boxes and labels. And it's the timeliness and what all those other charges end up costing us, that's why you need a very efficient process. And we try to quote this out as well as we can, and why we did the walkthrough so they could see it.
Can I ask another question that spurred?
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
Will there be a schedule set up for teachers who are working from home who are able to come in, for them to come in to pack up their own personal belongings?
Yeah, that would be part of the dynamic, Melissa, right? So that has the possibility of being a little complicated, but at the same time, the packing has to happen. And we do have, you know, a good percentage of our staff who are choosing to work remotely. It's not really required by their health conditions or other factors. So yes, that planning process, scheduling process will include making sure that those folks are accounted for.
Okay, great. Okay, so do we have a motion for renovation project, furniture and equipment moving?
I have a question.
Sorry,
Please.
there are two hands
you
up
taking-
right now.
Well, public comment has been closed. So
On this move?
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was public comment time at all on it.
Okay, let's go ahead. I'll reopen public comment. I saw two hands up. Kathy, go ahead and go first.
Sorry, I just have a quick clarification. I want to make sure that if teachers are expected to do any of this on their non-contractual time, that they will be negotiated pay for that.
So the contract has language in it currently that if there's a move, that 8 hours of timesheet time is paid. Obviously, we're happy to engage with DTA at any point in time to discuss any concerns that the unit has. But
Okay, because it sounds like it's at Christmas. So I want to make sure that our members know that.
Oh, no, the actual move of materials, staff should not be present for.
Okay.
Valley Relocation would probably say, we don't want the job if everyone is going to be around. No, it's done without the presence of staff. Liability, interference, you name it. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Julie has her hand up.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to speak on behalf of being on the Citizens Advisory also. And we've gone through these timelines with Lee extensively in all of our meetings. And I just want to remind everyone that there are teachers that are on the planning committee, correct, Lee, that have met with you, have helped pick out furniture, that know all this. So I hope that is getting back, that message is getting back there. So they've been involved in this all along.
Thank you, Julie. I would just say members of that committee has not they're not a part of the scheduling of all of this. Actually, I'd be happy to send them the timeline, but in fact, all of this is going to start being rolled out very quickly. So what mostly the furniture and equipment folks talked about and what they were involved in was actually the choosing of the new furniture and equipment, which they did. And we did touch upon the moving aspect, but basically they were involved in the new purchasing.
Okay, so public comment is now closed. Do we have a motion on 11A2 to approve the request for proposal and request for approval of selected company for furniture and equipment moving at John Knight Middle School?
Move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Catlin?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. 11A3, John Knight Middle School renovation project furniture and equipment timeline. This is an information item.
Thank you, President Foster.
Thanks, honey.
Thank you.
You too.
Nicole's iPhone, you have yours. Thank you.
Sorry. Yes. So thank you, President Foster. We have the timeline that's been updated for you on the exact same item, the furniture and equipment, and it's in the packet. And it included all the way from day one back in January when we started this process, and to talk about Julie's question about the furniture and equipment and their involvement in the choosing of the new furniture and equipment. And that happened January, February. We were lucky that work did happen prior to COVID. And so beyond that now, a lot of activity has happened. Right now, the principal and assistant principal have been very, very intensively involved in timelines. And we are now coming up to after now, the moving company will execute a contract with that. There's a myriad of steps that need to happen, including working with Recology on bringing in toters, bringing in possibly accelerating the dumpster pickups. What we ask the teacher, we'll be asking the teachers to do, and Superintendent Dolan did speak to this. It's complicated by COVID. Normally you would have teachers on staff and they would start to purge or clean their classroom and slowly sort of get rid of the stuff that they've had for many years. And perhaps this is a great opportunity to do a little cleaning project. It's a little complicated by that, but we will get through it and schedule all this. There's scheduling for when coordination on the construction contract finishing, and then the moving. So in general, the big items are in the coming weeks in mid-November, before Thanksgiving, we'll be having a Zoom orientation meeting with the teachers and the staff. At that point in time, we will talk about the time, the process, the instructions on how to label boxes, what to do with their personal items, which by the way is take them home, all of them, all personal items must be taken home. And then you bring them back if you want to bring them back to the new school. But any of the district items, such as mostly it will be books, textbooks, materials, maybe stuff on the board, things like that, and any supplies. Of course, the specialty classrooms and departments have work to do as far as like the science department. Generally, what I've seen is a science department will get together and talk about divvying up the work for any of the science materials and supplies that need to be boxed up. This is a middle school, so I'm not, right now, I'm not as concerned with chemicals as I would be with a high school. And so we deal with all of if there are any special ways that we need to move any of the science supplies. Same thing goes with art. So there are various different specialty departments that we have dealt with very intensively, the department heads up until this point. And again, and another part is the library. So as you can imagine, a librarian, one person being asked to pack up all those books. So there are different ways that people will come together and work together on it. And I'm confident that that will happen. And people of good faith do this. And it is asking for this to be done. And the light at the end of the tunnel is you are in a new facility. So hopefully that's good incentive to do it. So let's go back to the timeline then. So mid-November, then as soon as that orientation meeting happens, generally that's when boxes go out, like the next day, labels. So of course, teaching and learning have to be happening at the same time as now teachers are thinking about packing. So it is a difficult thing for people to do. It's an encroachment on their time, that's for sure. So then when they're still in session, then they will be taking home their personal items and they'll be dumping stuff into toters, into recycling toters as well, and hopefully pack up the things they need. They label the boxes in a particular way, they stack up the boxes, and they label any piece of equipment that is going over. The principal and assistant principal have a role to play in that because there's always a worry about, do I need my 30-year-old rickety table? I think I'm going to need that. I better take it. I better put a label on it just in case. But we really discourage that. We have all new furniture and we're hoping that that once people get into the facility, they see what's there, they'll feel a level of comfort. Now, it's not the end all be all, of course. We know that could be transfer of materials back and forth, and we deal with that. We want to be flexible and move with it, with the project. Then as soon as, over at John Knight Middle School, then the new furniture and equipment is scheduled to come in from December 1st to December 15th. First, the new furniture comes in. That's by school specialty and by Campbell Keller. They come in, they assemble, attach, whatever they need to do, put everything in place. Then the movers come in after holiday break starts. The movers take 2 days, go to C.A. Jacobs. Nobody's there, no staff is there. As far as the teachers, there'll probably be admin staff there. And they palletize, they pack up the trucks, and we do the very quick distance move from one school to another over 2 days. Then they are given layouts of each room. You tape it up on the wall, on the door, actually, and probably there'll be one in the room as well. And that tells them where to put those boxes. Because what's going to happen is you have all nice new furniture in those rooms. We don't want any damage to happen to the new furniture when the old stuff comes in. So we have taken care to spell that out in the RFP, and we want to make sure that happens. But we work together. It's a very time-intensive thing, room to room to room to room. It's an interesting school because every room's kind of different. So there's different conditions. Then the teachers, the admin comes back and they start to look at stuff and get their things in order, and then teachers return. They will return to boxes, and then they unpack their boxes. They fold up the boxes, put them out in the hallway. We gather up the boxes and labels, any unused labels, and we go into any questions, any more moving requests, things like that. So we're there. We don't just disappear. Come January 4th, we don't just disappear. We're there to see that transition through. So then after that, we'll have a lessons learned. We'll do evaluation. We do any kind of punch list. We do any kind of issues with the moving company or with the other furniture. If there is any defect in new furniture or if there has been any damage, things like that. And then we'll come back to you with an evaluation, lessons learned, and talk to you about what the process was like. So that's the timeline.
Great, thank you, Lee. Do we have any board questions for Lee on this item? Seeing none, let's go out to public comment. Do we have any public questions or comments on this item?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment, and this is just an information item. Thank you, Lee, very much.
Thank you so
let's
much.
move on to item 11A4, COVID-19 and the 2020-2021 school year update. You're on mute, Brian.
I want to thank people for holding on when we have guests such as Mr. Umby and Ms. Coop. We'll try to have them do their work and move on to our kind of internal agenda items after we've seen our guests do their stuff. Usually we've had the COVID-19 up at the very front of our meeting. So that's the reason why we have it back a little bit tonight. So I want to share with you tonight, really focus on 2 surveys. One that went out to parents a couple of weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, perhaps, and that was related to the distance learning program and families' experience with that. Mr. Giramani is going to walk us through some of the details involved there. And then once he is done, I'm going to touch on a brief survey that we administered just within the last week related to the hybrid model and the possibility of reopening in a hybrid model here over the next relatively short amount of time. So we wanted to make sure before we talked about reopening that we created some understanding around what the distance learning experience is for people right now. Mr. Giramani, I'm going to invite you to take over and walk us through that survey, please, sir.
Right. Hello, everybody. Mark, may I have permission to share my screen, please?
Should have it now.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to walk us through a PowerPoint here. Hopefully everybody can see that. Yes?
Yes, sir.
And I just lost power here. Okay, you guys got me back?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost everybody there for a moment. Not sure what happened. I'm gonna pull up my notes. All right, so as you can see, this is a family survey that we did about 2 weeks ago, at the end of the week through the weekend. And just want to give a shout out to Denise Diaz, a compliance specialist out of the Ed Services office, for putting together a lot of this data. There's a lot of data. We had a lot of questions. And the way we've done this survey was to really be able to drill down at school level for our principals to be able to see, and we were trying to aggregate it for this presentation. So thanks to Denise for that. Purpose tonight is just to give a broad overview of these questions or of the results. I could give more nuanced responses if you need them. So feel free to ask, and we'll go ahead and get started. So just some quick details here. It occurred between September 29th and October 4th. We had 844 surveys completed. We did ask families to complete one per student. It was a longer survey, so I do suspect that there were some families who may have done one for one child and then chose not to do it for other kids. But we really wanted to try and get some really robust data as opposed to a quick hit survey. We had 715 done in English and 129 done in Spanish. And really the purpose of this survey was to measure what was the experience from the perspective of our families with regard to distance learning. So this was for families. It did not go to our teachers. This did not ask anything about going to a hybrid model or anything like that. It really was just a temperature check on how distance learning was going for our families. So we asked a couple of questions around kind of clarity of tasks. In other words, did people understand did kids understand what they were supposed to be doing? And did families understand that as well? So as you can see here, we had pretty good turnout on both of these. So we had about 86.8% of families reported that their kids knew what they were supposed to do. An additional 82% of adults so that they felt the same way. To us, this demonstrates that kids and families are getting more comfortable with how teachers are organizing their digital classrooms, and there's some sense to those things. And I don't know, Mr. President, if you want to hold questions till the end, or if folks want to jump in as we go, I'm happy to do it either way.
Yeah, we can hold them till the end, I think.
Okay. All right. So next one is really around student efficacy. Are they able to do work independently with little or no assistance at home? The purpose of this question really for us was around equity. We know we have a lot of kids that are working by themselves, frankly, or in larger daycare centers, et cetera, and really need to kind of operate with some independence. So as you can see, we had about 70% of our families say they felt like their kids were able to do that independently. Not surprisingly, when we isolated the TK through 2 group, there we had 48% that said they disagree or strongly disagree with this statement. Really not surprising. But once we got to the 3rd through 5th and above, the numbers were really fairly strong for this as far as being independent. And then with regard to the other one, if the families know how to, or kids know how to get help, according to our families, about 85% of families report that their students knew how to get help from their teachers. So felt like they were able to access resources. So this was an interesting one. This is a quantity of work and time, and I frankly wasn't sure what to expect on this one because I've heard anecdotally had heard some people feeling like we were asking kids to do too much time, others saying not enough. As you can see here, we framed it as just right, too much, just right, too little, or not sure. So the amount of work my child is being asked to complete, 53% of families say we're getting it just right. 21% said it's too much, 9% say it's too little, and 17% weren't sure. Kind of similar numbers, but a little different. 63.3% of people believe students are asked to attend the right amount of time to their classes, with just over 10% believing it's too much or too little. So kind of an even split there between the too much or the too little. And then of course we had another 12% saying they weren't sure. Another surprising piece here, there really was no significant differences between the grade bands on this. If you were 9-12 grade band versus K2, families more or less responded the same, or the results kind of fell the same. With regard to the work piece, that first graph that you see there, the elementaries overwhelmingly felt like the amount of work being asked is just right. And then the numbers at the secondary level were a little more skewed, but differently. So at C.A. Jacobs, a lot of families felt like the quantity of work was, most families did feel the quantity of work was just right, but about a quarter felt like it was too little. And then we went to the high school level, it was about 40% said it felt just right, but just under a third felt like it was too much. So we shared this data with our principals so that they can, work with their teachers to kind of unpack what this data means for their sites. But yeah, some interesting data for us to think about. And then as far as additional support, so we asked this kind of two frames here. One is for kids, one is for families. The first was if my child, if available, my child would participate in after hours academic support or tutoring. We do not currently have a program. I know we've talked about that here. I frankly felt like this was probably not going to be as high as it was. I was wrong. About 50% of our families thought their students would participate in after hours support. Kids, we've heard, are in front of computers all day long doing academic work, and then there's other screen time that happens. And we felt like probably we're ready to be done for the day, but we need to dig into this a little bit because clearly we have a number of our families that are requesting more. This survey also occurred just as we were getting some parent supports off the ground, and we got about 40% respondents indicating they would like some more support here. So in the meantime, we have pushed out a resource page to our families as kind of a tier 2 support. And then we've also created a referral form for teachers to be able to ping the parent liaison and site tech to reach out if they recognize a family's having an issue. And the tech TOSA out of my office, Jake Ritchell, has gone to school sites to do some training of the site techs and the parent liaison. We want that support coming first from sites, because often when families are struggling with technology, there's other issues going on too. So we want to give some wraparound services there. But I would say work to be done on both of these still. And I will say one other point about, I'll go back one point. I thought especially the parent one was interesting considering, what I thought was fairly positive data from those early ones that people know what their kids are supposed to be doing or feel like they know what their kids are supposed to be doing. You'd anticipate that most would say, yeah, then I don't need a lot of support, but they're clearly saying that they do. So just pointing that out as something interesting. Student engagement and success. These really are kind of the two, well, there's a lot of important questions here, but these are kind of form the crux of what we're doing. The first one is, my kid engaged in what they're supposed to be doing? And 68% agree or strongly agree that their students are engaged. And then on the other side, is my kid having success in distance learning in 2020, 2021? And 60.4 across the district think that they are having success. Now, and we have about a quarter who strongly disagree, which is unacceptable. We need to do better there. But I think it's also fair to point out that, and if we're being honest with ourselves, if we were to ask the families this question in the before times, before our closures, we probably would have a fair amount of families also saying that their kids were struggling with school there too. So, I think while we would certainly shoot for 100% agree or strongly agree on this, we know that probably is, may not be just a product of distance learning, but just a product of the fact that we've got to do a better job reaching all our kids in our system. Something interesting with regard to both of these, they are remarkably similar across the grade band. So there's no difference between, again, that K2 grade band versus 3-5 versus intermediate versus high school. It really kind of skews pretty evenly across. Moving on to, we asked a question around mental health of our students. We frame that question as, my kids feeling stressed that's impacting their ability to do work. So 38% of our kids are feeling stressed, and that's too many. One of the ways we did this survey was we asked families to provide student ID numbers, and part of that was so that we could push this back to sites. So families responded that, yeah, this is going on, that we could have, administrators, counselors, or whoever the site feels appropriate, do a little outreach, just even a check-in to see if we need to add some more resources to a kid. We also use this as an opportunity to have a direct link for families to go to our mental health referral form. So thanks to Adrienne Lauder for putting that together. So we're continuing to push out our socio-emotional learning lessons. Adrienne and her team are processing this data and working on ways to more effectively serve our kids with regard to this. And then I just think I speak personally on this as a parent with kids in districts. This is hard. And there's lots of stressors in our society, in our community right now. Obviously a pandemic, but this was at the tail end of really smoky weather where kids weren't able to get outside. Rumor has it there's an election coming up that's causing a lot of, consternation out there, not to mention an economy. So, I think this is a hard time for everybody. And kids feel that. And so not surprised to see that we have a lot of kids that are feeling it. Not an excuse that we don't need to serve them, but I just want to make sure that we're pointing that out. And then it's also, I think, good to point out that close to 50% of our families are telling us that kids are doing okay. It's not impacting them. Again, 40% is too many, not trying to diminish that, or 38% is too many that are feeling stressed, but there you go. And then last but not least, and really want to give a shout out to our principals, especially, but their office staff as well for this communication from school sides. You have 86% of families saying that, yeah, and our teachers, sorry, as well. We framed it as school because we know a lot of the communication comes from the front office, but it also comes from classroom teachers. So people are feeling like communication's happening. 86% are telling us that. We've got under 10% saying they disagree with that, either strongly or otherwise. But those are solid numbers. And again, like some of the other questions I've pointed out, this rang true through all of our grade bands. And that's the quick overview there.
Okay, great. Do we have board questions or comments?
I just want to say thanks for taking these surveys and taking the time to do them. I think this is really important information for us to have going forward. And some of it's positive and some of it's mixed and some of it's just downright not positive. So I think that's important for us to know moving forward.
But I do want to point out one other thing. Sorry, Caitlin, thank you for the opportunity. So, but also by generating with the student ID numbers, we can also use our student database system to piece out our different student groups, like our English learners, our migrant students, our socioeconomically disadvantaged. We can do it by ethnicity, et cetera. Again, this is a lot of data to unpack here, so we haven't yet had a chance to do that, but we'll continue to push on that just to make sure that, look for any trends from those student groups, especially the vulnerable ones, so we can serve them better.
Any other board questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question, Luke. So typically we get lots of data. First of all, thank you for all of this. This is very helpful. But a little bit more data that I'm just wondering about. We get like where our students are in benchmarks and different things. Is there a way, and we were really worried about the loss of learning that this whole COVID thing has caused, that we can look internally about the student success rate? Like in secondary, it should be fairly easy because we just had grades that came out. To compare that compared to before the pandemic to see how successful students are learning and doing. And elementary school, I guess the only way would be to look at benchmarks, and I don't know if they're doing benchmarks.
So this is probably the hardest thing of our work right now, and it's one that we're talking about as leaders. We've done some of our benchmark testing, our standardized testing at elementary school. I will tell you that the feedback we've had from our site administrators vis-a-vis their teachers is there are some reliability questions. The fact that we're not at school doing those things has caused some concern with regard to how accurate the data that we are getting from those assessments is. So as we roll into conference week after next, or is it 2 weeks? First week of November. Let's forget, I think, yes. There we go. First week of November. Our teachers there are kind of struggling with, typically they know exactly what to talk to parents about, and that's just a little bit different this year. So we're actually giving some time to our teachers here in the next couple of weeks at elementary to really talk about what are the things that they feel like they can accurately share with our teachers. But to say that we are in the same place as we typically are with regard to accuracy of reporting simply would not be true. We're not as close as we are. We've had to readjust our pacing guides. We're still trying to get through our standards at the pace that we are, but we're seeing kids for less time. There's just a reality to that. So that's hard to answer that question really well. And we have not yet cracked that, if I'm being honest with you, Melissa. And thank you for that question, because that's hard to unpack.
Any other board questions or comments?
Nick, even if we were to go to the hybrid model, we would still be seeing students less. So that could continue, correct?
Well, I don't know that I don't know that I can comment on what the hybrid model would look like yet. Most of the ones that I'm familiar with, and I know that have been discussed informally or formally, do not have students. If it's a hybrid model, by definition, kids are not going to be at school full time.
Right.
Only full time does that. So yeah, you'd have to address that or find ways to address that.
Any other board questions or comments? So just to second what you said, Nick, good job to teachers and administrators on the communication. That is so key when we're going through times like this, that people need to communicate well, and 86% is very good. I do look forward to hearing when you drill down more on the data on what we can tell for the unduplicated kids, and where there might be students, which groups that distance learning has just not done the job adequately for them, so we can figure out how to address that better. So, okay, let's open this up to public questions and comments then.
We have Molly up first.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much to the Dixon teachers and district for putting together the distance learning that you have. And I do agree with, I think this is a pretty accurate representation of how I myself have viewed distance learning. I would, however, just like to note that in answering this honestly, I think we're making the best of the situation we can. And I really do feel like this is not an accurate representation of what many parents are liking from distance learning, or not liking from distance learning. However, feelings towards going back to school. And so while I do appreciate everything that's been done, I do really want to see what our district's plans are for returning. And so please, to the board and teachers, know that there are many parents that appreciate what you have done, but we really want to have an option for those who want to go back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Any other public questions or comments? Jenny.
Thank you. I just was going to say this survey came out before I saw some of my kids' grades on his assignments. So, you know, I thought he was participating fine and doing his assignments okay. And then I checked some of his Google Classroom emails, and maybe that's not happening. So I feel like at the elementary school level, as far as how well our kids are doing in distance learning, like I won't really know that until I have a parent-teacher conference with the teacher.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
That's a good point.
Any other public questions or comments? Kim.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to make a comment in terms of surveys such as this, and how I don't think it gives a correct representation of what's actually happening. Asking parents who are not professionals in this type of arena, they are not trained professionals in education. I don't know that they're able to quantitatively measure success for their children. Also, in terms of that success, it's interesting to me, I attended the athletic meeting last night with parents, and the concern is that children at this time last year is almost doubled those who are ineligible to participate in sports, meaning that their grades are declining quite significantly. So I'm wondering then, how can we do better on measuring the actual success of distant learning and then showing how it's actually hurting children's education? And I hope that's clear.
Yes, thank you, Kim. Okay. Do we have any other public questions or comments? Nick, anything you wanted to add in response to any of those comments? I did hear as well on the sports meeting about the significant increase in ineligibility of student athletes. I don't know if you've looked at that at all.
I actually I hadn't heard that. Thank you for sharing that. I had not heard that yet, nor have I had a chance to talk with Ms. Marquez about that yet. You know, I'm not going to open the Pandora's box of grades right now. How about that? As far as it's a challenging measurement sometimes with our student success as far as learning goes, because sometimes it indicates that kids aren't doing things versus what they actually know and don't know. That's a weekend long conversation, if we're being honest. I do want to point out that I can't remember her name, but the first, I think it was the first parent who said
Molly.
That, yeah, this felt like a accurate representation of her feelings, but please don't mistake this for her desire to bring her kids back to school. And this, again, this was very deliberately done to not muddy those waters, because that was a separate survey, which is going on. I believe Mr. Dolan is going to talk a little bit about here momentarily. And from my chair, I totally understand that. I'm not seeing this as I'm not looking at this as an endorsement one way or the other, if you filled this out honestly. So that was not the intent of this, but I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Anything else on this item, Nick?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay, so let's move on to item 11A5, update on enrollment and staffing.
Sorry, Luke, I noticed a hand up. James Bounds, if you wanted to include that now.
Sure, let's go back to public comment. James?
I'm sorry. I just had a question about the special education kids, how it's working out for us as our grandson is in the special ed program. And it's really tough to have a autistic, nonverbal, per se, grandson that's trying to do Zoom for school when the majority of his learning is really one-on-one with his teacher and his aides. It's tough, but we're managing, but it's definitely different trying to maintain his just his ability right there to sit down for 2 hours or 2.5 hours to sit in front of a computer screen. It's almost impossible to keep his attention on that, you know, with me sitting right next to him, you know, me trying to be the teacher. And it's kind of hard for a grandpa to be a teacher when he's not trained to be a teacher. Tony Phillips is doing an awesome job. Don't get me wrong, but for special needs kids, it's really, really tough to do this distance learning. That's all I really had to say, Luke.
Okay, thank you, James. Yeah. I think we all recognize that's a very difficult thing that we're having to try to work through. Nick, anything you want to add to that?
Just thank you for sharing, and I see Brian unmuted as well. So,
Brian, anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I'll make some comments in when I talk about the town halls here as well. I think the survey results show what we understood already. There's a wide range of experiences that our families are having out there. We certainly, when we compare what we're doing, and the circumstances are obviously different with the time we have to plan for this year. But when you compare what we were doing back in April and May compared to what we're doing now, we are light years ahead. And I really want to thank our staff for all the time and energy and creativity they're putting into making the distance learning as engaging and meaningful as possible. But it's still really hard. It's you know, James touched on his grandson as one example, but there are many across the district, and you know, the survey questions, a few of them, you know, captured that this is hard. It's hard for students. It's hard for parents and families. It's certainly a greater demand on our staff as well. We all know that learning best occurs when that student is at school, in class, with their peers, and the expertise and support and love of the staff on that campus. That's what we know works best. And so here we are in this. And circumstances have now allowed us to consider reopening in a hybrid model. And if we go that direction, that's going to be hard too. Different kind of hard, right? I wanted to, before I get into the survey, just point out to people, remind people, and this is somewhat different than what's happening in some of our neighboring districts, that we have intentionally introduced this idea of reopening in hybrid to the board, to staff, to the community, and have had what is now becoming an extended period for people to provide input. We had 3 town hall meetings. We had our survey. This is now really our second board meeting where we've been in red and have the opportunity to go into hybrid. And what's happened in other places, and I don't fault them for this, it's just another approach, is that management has come forward with plans or with recommendations. And I just think it merits highlighting that we take a different approach here, where we throw the question open and try to get the input from people, and then set some direction, and then plan the details. So for some people right now, I know that it's a little frustrating that we don't have the nuts and bolts, A to Z, connect the dot, the checklist is complete plan for everybody. And that really is intentional. I think I would say, because we want to know what people are thinking and where people are prior to detailing out that plan. So the data that Nick presented is I think has to be part of our conversation tonight. And what I'll share here in just a second, and Mark, if you can make it available for me to share, what I'll share is another piece of the puzzle, right? And I think tonight, hopefully we'll have some more public comment after I do my sharing, and around what should we consider moving forward. It's we've seen neighboring districts in just the last week or so opt to go into distance learning into January. We see a couple neighboring districts really trying hard to go into hybrid. There's a large, really one of the larger charter schools in the area in Vacaville, which has kind of thrown the doors wide open and is welcoming everybody back. So there's a range of things that people are doing out there, I think. And I just want to, again, applaud the board for having us take the time to listen before we go down a path. I think it's the right thing to do. And I think, again, you're doing it well. So all of that said, let me get into the slideshow here. And this is not particularly long, so count your blessings on that. So I do touch on the survey results and a little bit of a summary on the town hall meetings that we had. So we had a total of 1,194 responses. 1,025 of those came in English, 169 came in Spanish. While there were some differences in percentages in relation to the questions, we combined all of these. That's not a basis to provide separate reports on the data. So just under 1,200 responses. And these really should reflect 1,200 students. And that's if, and we had a glitch at the start, but we did encourage people to complete it for each of their children. And at first you couldn't do that. You could only complete it for one. So I apologize for that little glitch. So the site participation, we had a good breakdown. I think a really pretty representative breakdown of participation. We did include our preschool program in the survey. Preschool program is, a lot of people don't even know we have one. It's a very small program. Its primary purpose is to serve students with disabilities beginning at age 3. But we also have a blended component. We have typically developing peers who participate in the program. So that was 6 or 7 families who participated, but we're glad to have them. You can see the 3 elementary schools are within a pretty narrow range. At C.A. Jacobs, that is the one site that perhaps is a little bit low in its participation rate. And Dixon High, you see about 1/3 of our respondents, and that does accurately reflect, we have a little bit more than 1/3 of our population is there. So all the sites did participate, so we're glad to see that. I broke down by grade level and kind of in bands or in ranges. So almost 12% of our respondents were TK or kindergarten. You see a little over 16% first or second grade, just about 19% 3rd through 5th, 16.8 on 6th through 8th, and then 35.5 9th through 12th. And I just point out that 9th through 12th does include students in the alt ed program. So we had 3 prompts. This was a very simple ask of folks once we got into once they got past the demographics. So the first prompt said, I would have my child participate in the hybrid model as soon as the district was prepared to offer it. So that was intended to be, we're coming as soon as you got it ready. Second prompt, I'd have my child participate in the hybrid model in January. So after winter vacation, and this was intended to capture families who have a sense, and there's many, not just school families, but many folks out there worried about cold and flu, worried about additional planning time. And we did hear suggestions in some of our earlier conversations, including the town halls, about possibly starting in January. And then final choice, I would keep my child in distance learning if the district began offering a hybrid model. So that's basically the stay put option, okay? So what did we see? Hybrid as soon as ready. So 601 of our respondents, so 50.5% said yes, that first prompt is what they would like to do. 24.5% indicated hybrid after the holidays, and 24.8 distance learning only. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of analyze or dissect this data. The one really broad way is that we've got half of our families who would be willing to come back as soon as we're ready. You know, and the premise of that was here in the next, let's call it a month or something along those lines, right? Within weeks, a month, something of that nature. Half of our people there. Another quarter interested in hybrid, but not till after the holidays. So you can make a case that we've got 75% of our families who are ready for hybrid, although it's split between those who are ready now at 50% and those who would be ready after the holidays at basically the 25. And then the final number with 24.8. So basically a quarter of our families want distance learning only. So they would not make a distinction between hybrid before or after the holidays. They want to remain in the program as it currently exists. So again, you can take this as 50-50. You can take this as 75-25. There's probably other ways that you could interpret this. I'm not a statistician, and it's the last math class I ever took, and wasn't very good at it back in 1983. So we also had our parent town halls, and we had 3 nights. The first night was entirely in Spanish for TK through 12. Second night was in English focused on the elementary grades. The third night was in English focused on the secondary grades. And some themes from both the comments that people made and some of the questions that were asked. So the overriding one, and we all know this is the top priority, was safety. Questions about what kind of precautions would be in place, would masks be required, how would a movement of students on campuses be organized, would there be testing or temperature checks, a variety of questions and concerns. They're saying, how are we going to make this safe for both students and staff? Next theme, just the real variety of experience with distance learning. Some parents just saying in distance learning right now, their kids are thriving and this is a great fit for them, and they don't feel any need or strong interest right now in having in-person instruction. And then other families who spoke of the absolute great difficulties that distance learning pose for their children and for the family as a whole. For some of these people, it was around work schedules and being able to support their children. For others, it was just a lack of knowledge or expertise, experience to be able to help their child learn basically the content, the skills, the other pieces that are part of students being successful. Also had concerns over the instructional schedule changes and potential changes in teachers. So we made sure that this point was clear, that you could have a new division of students based on how many families chose distance learning and how many would choose hybrid, and to keep classes balanced or groups balanced, that you might have to move some families who, let's say it was at 75-25%, that you might have to have some students move from a current teacher to another teacher to make sure that the balance between distance learning classes and hybrid classes was kept the same, or vice versa. So the idea for families of their child or children having a new teacher or new teachers at this point in time was not welcomed at all. We heard some staff voice strong feelings about that as well at our last meeting. So pretty much universally panned, I think it would be safe to say. A number of families talked about the mental health concerns they have for their children, that this this isolation is not good for them, that there's a lot of stress and anxiety, students exhibiting depression as well. So lots of families feeling non-academic challenges for their kids. Technology, Nick in the parent survey showed, people could still use some help. And so we heard that from some. I think we're seeing that people feel they now have equipment, although there's still some issues around connectivity, especially for people in the more rural areas within the district. So this technology was not a major theme, but it was offered up at times. We did make clear, as I shared in our last board meeting, and I've shared now in a couple of the Friday communications, that the direction that we have taken so far was a focus on early grades. So TK through 2 was the initial part of our discussion. And then students with higher needs. So especially our students with disabilities who are enrolled in our intensive learning centers, preschool students, and some of our other students with disabilities who would benefit from in-person small group instruction perhaps. Also have a concern for some of our students with mental health services and them having the adequate support that they need right now. So nobody disputed that. Everybody understood, agreed why that would be the focus. But along with that came, but I really hope you can get, and whether this was the secondary sites meeting or the elementary one with upper grade elementary parents saying, I really hope that you can get my children back soon as well. And so, no dispute over the potential focus on our youngest and neediest students, but an interest for those who want to come back to make that happen as soon as possible. And the other piece that came out is program choice is a must, that we absolutely need to allow the choice for distance learning for those families who wish to continue with that, and that we have to offer that hybrid opportunity, that in-person opportunity for the families who want that as well. So that's where people have shared kind of how they feel and what their thinking is at this point in time. And I'll entertain any questions or comments the board has first, Luke, before you kick it out to the broader group.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, any board questions or comments?
I just want to comment that as I read that and I understand all of the concerns from everybody on all the levels. I mean, there's so much to think about when you look at this. I feel like we're going to have to start really having a conversation about the fact that if we want to go back and offer program choice, we are going to have to switch teachers for some folks. It's impossible to do one without the other.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so either I just think it's important that we really get that out there right now, that for that, 75% who say they do want to go back and the 25% who say they want to stay home, all valid choices. And yet in order to accommodate that, I mean, just logistically, in order to accommodate that, if you have 25% of a class leaving the class, they have to go somewhere, right? I mean, because I don't think we can ask teachers to run two separate classes. I mean, I guess that would be the alternative, right? Is we could ask teachers to run, two separate classes, but I think that we get a lot of pushback from teachers on that. And so in terms of looking at the community, I just think we really need to wrap our heads around this. You can't have both.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask teachers to run two separate
No,
classes, right? And I know you're not suggesting you would either. I think we would be, that's a total a non-starter, right? So yeah, the dynamic, there's, and it would vary probably by site and by grade level, just as who's choosing what, but it has really large potential to just create a bunch of disruption with regard to the relationships that have already been established between students and their teachers, and those peer dynamics as well, which while it's distance learning still exists, right? So I think it's a big issue, and I think you're right. We probably need to push harder on it than we have so far.
And I don't think it means that we don't consider it. And we don't look at it, because I don't want to have anybody come away with that feeling that, if it's hard, we're not going to do it. I just think everybody needs to be on board that if we want to go back in any way, there's going to have to be this shift for at least some kids, and some teachers. That's just going to have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I echo that also, and maybe to make it more palatable or more understood is to give out some hypothetical situations, taking names and grades out, because there is just no other way when a fourth of the class stays in distance learning and the others leave. So if we could make it less personal and give some examples, maybe it could be more clearly understood.
Any other board questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. I would say, Brian, as you know, I went to all three of those meetings with you, and I read the rooms like you did. Very similarly, I think that was an accurate depiction of my view of what people were feeling and saying. The one thing I would add is that I think some of the parents who voiced the desire to start after the holidays, one of their feelings was the concerns about flu and symptoms being similar with COVID versus flu and all those things. But another one we heard was they thought that if the kids had to switch teachers, it would be easier for them to do that after the holidays because they've had that break. I don't know if the idea is it's almost more like starting a new school year, so to speak.
Right.
You know, so that I just wanted to comment on that because that was something I recalled hearing. So, okay, well, let's go out to public questions and comments. I'm sure we've got some interest here. I see Pinky's hand up.
Hey guys, I'm multitasking at soccer practice right now too. So my question is about the teachers who, I know you're going to give the option, I think it sounds like you're going to give still the option of teachers having the choice to teach remotely. Now, how is that going to work at the high school? Are you going to have the kids in a classroom with a computer in front of them or a monitor or a screen, and then they continue to submit the work? I mean, I think it's fine the way that they're submitting work. I think it's easier for the kids because then they can do it from their phone, they can do it from their Chromebook. If they're at grandma and grandpa's, they can submit work from there. So I do appreciate that. The whole Google suite is amazing to me. But I'm just concerned more of the secondary level, how the kids are going to be taught if a teacher in a specific subject chooses to stay at home. Like, you know, especially like say foods, for example. Bella's got foods right now and she's choosing to do different projects, but there haven't been any grades put in there. You know, that I don't know how she's not getting any real feedback from the projects that she's doing. And so things like that, where it's a little bit more specialized, I'm concerned how the kids are going to get the quality education that they're going to need, especially for, you know, like we were talking last week. I think Jax mentioned something about the kids who are in the AP classes. Like that's, of course, it's the prerogative of the teachers if they have a condition or they're not comfortable coming in. I totally value that right and their opinion and that choice for them. But on the flip side, I want to know how my kid's still going to get that quality education, especially in her junior year at this point where, you know, she's going to get ready to start looking at colleges and how she's going to follow through with that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that I hope you guys end up addressing sooner than later, I guess. Thank you.
And I'm not going to answer, Luke, but I just want to, Pinky, if I can just make sure I've got your question clear. And I think I do, and I'm going to state it a little bit differently just to make sure. So your question amounts to more or less, how do we ensure that the learning experience for students stays comparable, right? Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. You just can't replicate an in-class situation on the computer. I teach in kindergarten. You guys know, like it is insane. I go home exhausted every day after being online for 2.5 hours, and that's it. You know, but on the flip side, like I'm still able to engage the kids, and there's learning going on. It's just like you're saying, it's not comparable to being in the classroom with a live teacher, interacting with fellow students and kids who are thinking on the same level. You know, like the breakout groups are great, but they're not getting the quality discussion. Like a teacher can pop in, but in a classroom, you know, you always have your ears on everywhere in every corner of the room, but in breakout rooms, you don't. So, you know, kids being on task and kids having the opportunity to be pushed a little bit further in their learning and their questioning is really important to me. So yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm looking for,
Great.
Brian. Like,
Okay.
how is the experience going to be comparable? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for letting me clarify.
Okay, Ryan's next.
I just have a comment on the survey that Brian did about who wants to go back, who wants hybrid, all that, and the changing of teachers. I've had plenty of parents asking me recently if we're even talking about a return to hybrid. So they have no idea we're even talking about it, even though I think the communication's been pretty good. Nor do they realize that that means that their kids could change teachers. So I think your survey would look a lot different if they actually realized that was a possibility. So I think that we need to have that communication go out stronger. I'm not sure how, because I know you put out a weekly letter, and I know, you know, when they ask me, I let them know to come to the board meeting to do that, but they aren't aware of it because they're asking, or were they even talking about it yet? So I think the knowledge that their teacher could change could make a big difference on that. Because some of them have already mentioned it when I say, oh, this is what they're thinking about, this is what they're doing, come to the meetings. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, Molly's next.
Hi, thank you. I guess I'm just curious, we've seen like what parents want to do, and I'm hearing you, Mr. Dolan, about talking about this as a group decision. And I guess I would like to know what teachers are thinking, or a breakdown of what they want to do.
Let's wait till the end,
Yep.
Brian.
I am. I was saying I'll answer that when we're done.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Molly. Stacy.
Okay, sorry. So my question maybe kind of be two-part, and one part may have gotten asked prior that I missed in another meeting. But I think that just being a parent of teenagers, you know, you hear a lot, and I think it is out there. Parents know that we are talking about returning our children to school. They may not be as engaging as with the surveys as we would like them to be, but they definitely are aware. And I think a lot of the concerns lie with that 25 lingering percent that want to come after the break is, you know, parents are fearful of an outbreak. And if we return a large portion of children to school and we change up their schedules, have we thought about what's going to happen if we do have to shut down again before we're ready? Is there going to be a gap in our children's getting back into the swing of things, so to speak, like getting back to virtual? Or I think that's a concern I know I have for myself, as well as the teenagers that I have in the district, because they are apprehensive about changing classes when they return to school, but they also don't want to not have to go back. I mean, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole is next.
Yeah, I just had two quick questions. Brian, you said that it was undisputed that the K2 community wants to, needs to, and desires to go back. And you said undisputed twice, but Colette, who teaches second grade at Gretchen Higgins, Ryan, who teaches second grade, and myself, who teaches second grade at Tremont, we all spoke very strongly and clearly at the last town hall and disputed the fact that second graders absolutely have to go back, and that we want to be in that group. We feel like we are being very successful. We're being very productive. We've invited you to our rooms. And so I want to make it clear that it has been disputed at least 3 times that I know of. And then the other thing I wanted to ask about was Pinky indicated that teachers are going to have the choice to do what they feel is safest for themselves. And I am wondering if that's at all the case. I'm under the impression that if we do not have a doctor's accommodation, that we have no choice and that we will be forced to go back into the classroom, whether we think it's safe or not, whether we're comfortable or not. So I wanted you to please clear that up.
Okay.
I think that would be remiss to not clear that up to the community, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
And Rebecca is next.
Hi, I am the parent of a senior at Dixon High School. And my biggest concern with the return to school, she is part of the ag program and also was on the way to earning her welding certificates last year. I know that they have talked about having some of the elementary kids and the special need kids. What about the kids that have to have hands-on classes in order to continue their education? Is there anything that is being looked at for that, for those kinds of students that are looking at trade schools for instead of a four-year college? This is something that we actually switched to Dixon High School specifically for the agriculture program. We do not live in Dixon, but we have found that the agriculture program that they have there is phenomenal. But now there is concern that not only will she have trouble receiving the certificates and other students in her class that need them for work and continuation of other things, but now we're looking at the possibility of not being able to have this kind of in-person instruction and hands-on teaching that she needs for these skills.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And Holly is next.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to reiterate what I said during the town hall meeting. I am ready for my kids to come back to school when it's deemed safe. I'm happy to see that I guess 50% of people feel the same way as I do. However, I wanted to bring up something that I didn't really hear brought up. It keeps being discussed that we would be starting with the younger grades and staggering up, you know, with high school kind of being last. And I had brought up during the town hall meeting that it seems silly to have two sites sitting there with no students, that if we were going to start staggering at the elementary schools, that why wouldn't we start staggering like 6 come back the same time as K and 1, or however they're going to do it, and 9th, and stagger the schools that are sitting there empty, so everybody can kind of get back on the same level. Because if we're deeming it safe to go back, I think it's safe for everyone to come back, and high school shouldn't be last on the totem pole for that. That's it.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. Okay, I see Nicole's hand up is again. Not supposed to call on people twice.
I know,
Go
I
ahead.
forgot to
Go ahead,
ask one of
Nicole.
my questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you for taking this. I just had a question and I was listening, but I didn't understand when Brian presented his first slide. Brian if a parent did answer a question, I mean, the survey 3 times, and for each of their 3 children, they said, I want my kid to go back. I want my kid to go back. I want my kid to go back. I missed the part if you said that you adjusted the stats for, that wouldn't count as 3 people. Like, is that 3 families or that was 3 responses? Because that changes it entirely. That's not 75% of the community if it's the same person 3 times, for example. And so I think you kind of addressed it, and I might have missed it, and I apologize for that, but I would like clarification on that.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Nicole. Okay, Jen.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I was wondering if there was a way for the families that choose to stay home, if they could be interactive on a Zoom during the classroom time. So if they choose to stay home, they could also be participating in the class in real time. That's my question.
So Jen, so I'm clear, are you asking if it would be an in-person class with the Zoom kids also in the class that's being taught in person?
Yes, so for the people that choose to stay home, they're still in the classroom, so they don't have to change teachers. If there's a way that can happen, first, that way everybody stays with the same teachers they've had, whether they stay home or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public questions or comments? Oh,
Christie's next.
Go ahead, Christy. Christy, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute still.
No problem. Go ahead.
My apologies. Thank you for taking my question. Real quickly, timeline. So making a decision as far as to, it sounds like not an if, but when. So how are we thinking, how far in advance will we know about when to return back to school, in hybrid or not hybrid? It's going to be hybrid, obviously. And then secondly, I guess I have a little bit of concern about talking so much about the switch over from CA to going to the new middle school in the middle of all this, when students haven't returned to school and then we return to school and we're switching schools, and it's a little bit confusing.
Okay, thank you. Natalie.
I just wanted to echo what Jen just said. I've had many discussions with parents and other educators in different districts, and they are doing that very same thing. The teachers are teaching the in-class students and keeping a Zoom open, so there's been no switching of teachers, and they're all receiving the same instruction. So I think that would be a good resolution, to not changing teachers for those kids that want to stay distance learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Katie.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us. And both of my kids, one's in middle school, one is in high school in 9th grade. They really do want to go back as soon as possible, even if it is for a hybrid. Of course, they would even go back full time if that was the case, but I know that's not. I suppose my concern, and I apologize if this has been addressed, is if the what's going to happen if the teachers associations don't agree to come back, since they've already now had the option to work remotely. If there's not a new agreement that's made, what does that mean for our students and any hope of a hybrid model? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Deborah.
Yes, I would just like to say that I agree with what Jen brought up about having a Zoom blended within classroom, so you're not trying to teach two different classes at the same time. That is a great idea that she brought up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
iPhone.
I think that's me. This is Shauna Humphreys. I was going to echo what Jen said, and I don't know if we can talk to other districts like Vaca Christian and Vacaville. So they are doing the hybrid where kids are in and then some kids are out, and they have some kind of monitoring system to where the kids that chose not to go back to school right now are seen as if they were, and they get to interact as if they were there. So I don't know if we can talk to them and ask how they're doing it so that we can kind of copy that.
Great, thank you, Shauna. Okay, Kim.
Thank you. Just two things. If I can get a clarification, Brian, you had mentioned when you were explaining the results of the polls that you wanted to get our neediest kids back. Who are you determining who our neediest kids are? What grade levels?
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. And so also just wanted to reiterate what Holly Purcell had said in terms of, I do not support the idea of holding on any grade levels. I think the high schoolers deserve just as much as an advantage of getting back as soon as possible as anybody else. And I think holding off on that is a disadvantage to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Any other public comments? Nikki.
I also just want to say I agree with both Kim and Holly, and please consider letting, when the littles go back, whatever you do, K first, K through second, also consider bringing back 6th and 9th so that the seniors are not waiting for the littles to get settled.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Anyone else? Kathleen.
Hi again, thank you. I just want to know how much consideration is being paid to Dixon's specific incidence rates as well as specific cases. As of Tuesday, I believe Dixon had 443 cases. And the last time we had a board meeting 2 weeks ago, we were at 420. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other public comments, I'm going to close public comment on this item, and let's go through the questions, Brian.
Okay. All right, so Pinky started us off, and what her question comment boiled down to was, how do we, ensure as close to an equivalent or an equivalent experience for students who may have a teacher working remotely as opposed to working in person. And we had a later comment. I kept some discipline. I didn't comment directly to Pinky, although I might have started to, because there's a range of courses in which this is critical, and we heard about a couple of them. We heard about AgMech. We heard about foods. We didn't talk too much about science labs, ceramics or drawing, physical education, band, just as a variety of things that you can't replicate the experience without being in a classroom setting. I mean, you just can't, right? And so that dynamic around how do you get it as close as possible, and is as close as possible good enough? That's a really difficult question, Pinky, and I think it's one, and I'll touch on teachers returning here a little bit more specifically in a couple of the questions coming. But I don't think you can ensure it. Brian Dolan speaking, superintendent of schools, not speaking for anyone else. I don't think you can ensure it without all parties being in the same room, teacher and students being in the same room in the same facility. It is my opinion on it. So Ryan had a comment about families knowing about potential schedule changes in teachers, and I was looking back quickly, and this was a point I emphasized at the town hall meetings, but have not emphasized broadly elsewhere. So I think the idea, Catlin, you talked about it, and then Ryan touched on it as well, that as a point of emphasis is really critical. So we'll make sure that that happens in tomorrow's update. Molly asked, what are teachers thinking? Was first of your questions. We are meeting with the Dixon Teachers Association bargaining team tomorrow afternoon, and we're expecting to get a report from them on surveying they've done of their members with regards to how they feel about hybrid or continued distance learning, those types of things. So right now, we don't have that information. We've got anecdotal stuff. We've got old survey data stuff, but we are anxiously anticipating getting some real good specific information from the association tomorrow. They've needed the time to survey their members. So we're looking forward to getting that tomorrow, and we'll be responding to it as we continue to meet with them twice a week. What happens if we open and then close, and we've made schedule changes? It's like cats and dogs living together in the streets or something like that. I'm trying to remember the exact wording from Ghostbusters, the original, but it would be very, very chaotic, very, very chaotic. So, and walking down that path and then having to close shop back up would be extremely challenging. I wouldn't want to have to try to do it, quite honestly. So Can we plan for that? Absolutely. Can we plan? How effectively can we plan for that? I'm not sure. It would certainly be simpler if we stayed in our current class assignments, teacher assignments, and were able to operate that way. Nicole, my comments about undisputed didn't refer to any specific grade level or anything. That was a general comment about the idea that learning happens best when kids and staff are together in their schools, in their classrooms, where they get the support and expertise and love, I think, were the three things I said from all the staff at the site supporting them. So I was not trying to ignore, I didn't ignore what you and a couple other second grade teachers said 2 weeks ago. I was referring to the big picture, that we have schools for an important reason, that it's where we all come together to see our kids learn and develop. So no ignoring of what was said a couple of weeks ago. The issue of teacher choice. So where will teachers get to work if we're in hybrid? That is what we are at the table with DTA about in part. So there has been no announcement, no determination about what would happen with hybrid learning with regards to our teaching staff. Our current situation, for those who might not be familiar with it, is our memorandum of understanding with DTA had everybody return to work for the first 4 weeks of instruction, except for those people who were out on leave or had the reasonable accommodation, the health basis, not to be working on campus. After that 4-week period, our staff had the opportunity to begin to work remotely. So about 40% of our staff are working remotely, while the remaining 60% are working in person in their classrooms, obviously without students. So we do not have any kind of position to state with regards to where people will be working, because that is the negotiation process. Nicole's third point with regard to 3 responses, we certainly did encourage and hope that families would make a response for each child. While they might live in the same household, a kindergartner, a 6th grader, and a 9th grader, certainly in different experiences, and I'm just pulling numbers out of the hat. So we did want to see the data, and I didn't present it broken down by grade level specifically today. That's some analysis that we'll continue to do. The survey just closed last night, but we did want to represent, to get a representation, even if it's from the same family, of how they would feel if they gave the same answers for all 3. That's still 3 students. We were not trying to capture just per family on this one. So Rebecca asked about the hands-on opportunities, and I touched on this a few minutes ago. I think it concerns all of us, the loss of these opportunities for our students, especially those for whom they view working in the trades or having some sort of hands-on career option ahead of them. This is really concerning. I've worked in this town for a long time. I've known any number of our grads who really excelled out in Ag Mech or other elements of the Career Tech Ed program, who found instant employment in good paying jobs with benefits and retirement because of their experience at Dixon High in those programs. So it is a real loss. Right now, we don't have the opportunity to bring those students back. We would hope, we obviously see it as a need and are not ignoring it. Holly had the comment about just perhaps transitioning in at multiple sites at once rather than just the grade level. Somebody else touched on that as well. She had shared that at one of the town halls as well. Jen was the first person to comment about kind of this blend between Zoom and hybrid, so that You wouldn't move students out of Mr. Dolan's class into distance learning with another teacher. You would keep all the students in Mr. Dolan's class, some of whom would be learning in person, some of whom would be learning in Zoom. So we are having some exploration around this. It's an interesting scenario. I know Vacaville is one district that had been looking at it previously. I don't know if they still are or not. What I would, and Shauna, thanks for mentioning Vacaville Christian. I hadn't heard what they were doing either. If anybody is in the meeting and you're aware of a district that is following this approach, please email me and let me know where those are. I would appreciate the chance to check those out. We don't, you know, we want to do the best things possible. Catlin, you got something there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because someone referenced Vacaville, I think also Kairos went back at 78% of their kids in class and the rest remote, and they are doing that, the Zoom in the classroom.
Okay,
So
great.
that may be one we want to look at, Kairos
Okay.
Charter School.
Super, thank you very much. So we will be exploring that, and yes, that's, you don't have to reinvent the wheel if other people are doing it and doing it effectively. There are some logistical issues around it for sure, but there's logistical issues around everything, truth be told. Christy asked about the timeline of a decision. So we're at the point where two things are moving forward. I think this process, as I spoke about at the start, about taking input and making sure that we are listening to people and having people share their thinking with us. I'm comfortable at this point after this meeting that we've taken that input that we need to take. I'm actually surprised that we're only at 113 people in the meeting tonight. I really did expect that we would have a larger crowd. In particular, the parent community, after we surveyed and the Friday update went out last week, talking about this prospect in some more detail. So I'm a little bit concerned about the level of participation, although the 1,200 survey responses was pretty decent. So I think we're at a point, and we'll know more after we meet with the teachers tomorrow. What is the outlook? Are we far away with them at the table? Are we close and have some things that we can agree on quickly? You know, what's the board's thinking about all this? You folks, as always, are absorbing the information we're sharing and listening to the input and such. And I think you've become really reliable leaders with that. So you may give us some general direction tonight, and you may not be ready to do that. So you know, our next meeting, what is our next meeting? November, it's a couple days after the election. Is that November 8th or 7th, 8th, somewhere around there? You know, I would anticipate that we have, if we're going to do something, we have to put here before the holidays. That plan has to be in front of you that night, ready for your blessing, with lots of detail, especially around the safety components, the scheduling components. So that doesn't sound very far away. And I don't want people to operate, and I've addressed this in the town halls as well. While we opened in distance, the ultimate goal is to get physical return as soon as possible. So it's not like that has been, you know, put in the refrigerator and not even on the stove. I wouldn't even say it's the back burner. It's probably one of those middle burners, and not too high heat, but we're at the point now where the heat has been turned up on it for sure. The CAJ transition, yeah, this whole pandemic business has put a lot of questions into how do we get students onto that campus successfully, even in a mid-year model. What we had been, we took a delay from August to January based on construction progress. And my hope had been that we would be ready and able to bring students into the campus like in December and have a 6th grade orientation day there, bus the kids over, and have a 7th grade day and an 8th grade day and such, and get them to see the campus and have some fun, perhaps eat lunch, those types of things. And we're not going to be able to do that here before the holidays. So that makes me concerned about what kind of transition we will have. You heard the earlier item about moving and transitioning staff over. So that that process has to occur. The organizational process and support process of that has to, but it does make me, current circumstances make me concerned about the transition process for students over there. I could not say that it doesn't. Natalie echoed the idea of a blended Zoom and in-person. Katie just expressed interest in the middle and high school, her middle and high school students wanting back, asked about the teachers union stand on this. As I said, we're going to meet with them tomorrow and get some information from them. Bill also talked about that Zoom in-person blend, as did Shauna. Kim asked me to describe our neediest students, and who I was referring to there, and we put this out a little bit, was our students with disabilities, especially our students who are in the intensive learning center. Those are our students with the most significant disabilities. We've also had a broader, and those students run from preschool through 12th grade. A broader conversation about potentially targeting other students with disabilities who might not be in the intensive learning center, but who would benefit from some instruction on campus. Also concerned about some of our English learners, our newcomers in particular, and students who have, some of our students who have mental health issues as well and benefit from our mental health clinicians or other services that we provide. So those are the broad groups of students who we include in our consideration around students with the highest needs. Kim also mentioned just about trying to get everybody back as close to simultaneously as possible. Nikki said the same basic point, mentioned 6th and 9th grade, and then Kathleen made a reference to the number of cases that are out there. And we continue to meet with Solano County Department of Public Health and other school districts in the county, as well as the charters. So, Luke, I think that exhausted the list, and I'll be happy to touch on anything I might have missed.
That was pretty good. The only thing I think was, and I don't know how much it could be a discussion all in itself. I don't know how much you want to go into, but I think Katie's question was, what if the teachers in the district don't agree? What is a general process about what happens?
Yeah, that could be a whole separate discussion.
A treatise.
Yeah. Yep. I would point to the MOU time where we started in very kind of polar opposite positions, I think, and it took some time for sure, and it took a lot of hard work by the teachers negotiations team and ours, and we ultimately reached a compromise. And regardless of how people feel about that compromise, we were able to reach that compromise. The board approved it and their membership approved it. So I'm confident that when we are talking about our employees and the Dixon Teachers Association, we're talking about reasonable people with whom you can work through any conflict. And again, whether you'd like to compromise or not, we did get one. Luke, you mentioned both with regard to the DTA MOU and the SEIU one. You've got a lot of experience in mediation, and nobody gets everything that they want through these processes. There is a potential that we get stuck, right? Ultimately, there's one party that gets to make a decision about whether or not we're going back to hybrid. That's the governing board. The governing board can make that decision regardless of whether or not we have agreement with our associations. We then still have, and please don't anybody misstate this or misconstrue this, we still have the obligation to negotiate with the association and SEIU on the working conditions around that, right? So right now we're at the table talking about what this might look like if the district were to take action. Say you called a special meeting for Monday evening, again, hypothetical example here. If you called a special meeting for Monday and said, we want a hybrid in place by November 9th, then we go to the table then and saying, here's the date, how do we make this work? What we've been trying to do is provide the opportunity for input and then bring that to the table, essentially. Tomorrow we have parent input and data to report. They'll have staff input and data to report. We begin to put those two pieces of the puzzle together. So can you get stuck in negotiations for a long period of time? Yes. You can also point to neighboring districts which have implemented distance learning so far this school year and still don't have agreements in place. Right, so you can get into that situation where people are doing their job of teaching or providing support through classified services without an agreement in place. So ultimately things can roll that way as well.
And then I think Kathleen's question was more about, are we looking at the specific Dixon infection numbers as opposed to general county numbers?
So in the weekly meetings, we have we get an update from Dr. Matias, or if he's not there and he's the director of public health, or one of the other doctors who is on staff. And they do not focus on specifically on the city or community numbers. However, there's a couple of our administrative staff who are checking those on a regular basis. Ultimately, the decision about hybrid or distance, reopening or remaining in current status rests with the board. The fact is that the county is in red, so every school district governing board is able to make its own determination. So I would have to believe that this board would make sure that they knew what was happening within town before they made a decision to go into any hybrid model.
Okay, and that's all the questions I have. Did any of the other board members catch any questions that we missed? Okay, seeing none. Anything else you needed to add on this item, Brian?
No, just if a board has any comment for us, any direction. Again, we're still in the input gathering stage, so not feeling the need for that. But if any of you had any kind of summary comments, anything of that nature, we would certainly accept those.
Any board comments or direction?
I think I'll just say that I would like to see us, look at some different, different models and look to see what other districts around us and charter schools are doing. And on a final point about infection rates in the city, I do keep hearing it referenced that that's the total number. It's the total number of cases that's happened since March, that 400 number. So we don't have 400 and something active cases right now. And I think it's also important to recognize that the vast majority of our teachers come from other places with higher and lower infection rates as well. So, it's hard to say whether or not you should pinpoint it to one community or whether or not you should go with what the state model and the health experts say, which is that you look at it in a broader context.
Thank you. And I would just say, Brian, I'd like a little follow-up and reporting on the idea of, is it feasible to do Zoom in the same classroom with students physically present, or are there hurdles that would make that not workable?
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to item 11A5, update on enrollment and staffing.
Super, thank you. I need to share my screen again. Mark, I don't know if I'm still set up to do that. If you can help me out. So a month ago, thank you, sir. A month ago, I presented you with some data regarding enrollment and staffing. And so tonight is a little bit of update on some of the same information, but specifically that night, excuse me, a member asked for some of the details around specific class sizes in the secondary setting. So I'm going to run through the basic numbers at each school site right now, give you the district total, and then I'm going to walk you through real specific information about class sizes, class averages, and then kind of highs and lows by course at both Dixon High and CAJ. So really quickly, Anderson currently sits at 442 students. So that's down just a little bit since last reported. I draw your attention, we have 24 TK students this year. We had about twice that last year. And why exactly that is so much lower. There are reports on a national basis about kindergarten TK numbers being down this year. As parents, kindergarten and TK are not mandatory. So did families choose on a widespread basis not to enroll their children this year or not? We have bounced, back and forth a little bit between having 2 classes of TK and 1 over recent years. So it's not totally unusual, but just did want to point that one out. At Tremont, we have a grand total of 384. We talked about the students in the Intensive Learning Center. So all of our elementary students in that program do attend Tremont. So that's 26 students who are enrolled in that program there. Home and hospital, just for those curious, or if a student has a medical condition that warrants them to stay home for a temporary placement, students are there. The gen ed, just the general education population at Tremont is down to 356 students, which is just remarkably low from where it was. But total enrollment at Tremont, 384. Gretchen Higgins is actually the one site that an elementary that grew from last year to this year, not by a bunch, just by a little bit. So the Gretchen enrollment is 391. They also house the Solano County Office of Education Severely Handicapped Program. So if you read this, it says non-ADA students. So these are students who are in the county's census count, not in ours. So they are students who live in Dixon with perhaps just 1 or 2 rare exceptions, but they're in a county program because of their specific individual education needs. So they do not count in this 391. In essence, the county collects the revenue attached to these 13 students in that program, okay? John Knight Middle School, in our system, we have to call it that already because we couldn't change names mid-year. Sorry there, I'm jumping around. That program right now is at a total of 592 students. So these 3 students are intensive learning center students. The special day class is the old name for that program. So you would see that 589 Gen Ed plus the 3 in the ILC, so 592 students. The number most concerning on this slide is 176 sixth graders. That's a really small number that we're working around there. Dixon High School, similar to Gretchen Higgins, it has its Gen Ed students, so that's 1,057 students right now. There are 7 students in the SCO program housed at Dixon High School. So when you include those students in the overall count, it's 1,064 students, okay? But your basic Dixon High population is 1,057. You go over to Main Prairie, right now their enrollment is at 79. We do staff at 20 to 1 over there with 5 FTE. So full capacity at Main Prairie is 100 students. It is typical that as we move into this time of year, that we see students transfer over from Dixon High School to Main Prairie. It's kind of the point where that first progress report comes out. Students who are already credit deficient see with their current grades that they may become more credit deficient. And so right around this trimester mark, a third of the school year completed, you start to see that transfer happen. So over the next 6 or so weeks, we should start to see the Main Prairie enrollment grow and the Dixon High School enrollment decrease. Community Day School, we have 9 students there. You can see they're all high school age right now. It is a program that can also accept middle school students. So very small program. It's one of the programs, quite honestly, that as we're exploring budget reductions for next year, it's one of the programs that we're having conversation about. Can we continue to fund it when we have so few students enrolled? That's a pretty typical number at just 9. We do have 4 students who are out in what are called non-public schools. So these are students with disabilities for whom the district cannot meet their individual educational needs, nor are any of the county programs good options for them. So these students these non-public school placements are expensive placements. They run probably at a minimum of about $30,000 per year. Oftentimes you're tacking on transportation costs to that. So when we include all of our students, including those in the SCO programs and these here in the non-public school, that grand total is 2,978. When you subtract the students in the non-public schools and in the SCO programs, you end up with 2,958. 2,958. And the last time I reported to you a month ago, we were 7 students higher. We were at 2,965, 2,965 at that point in time. So we've had very little change overall. There have been students in and students out, but we had very little change in that month's time. It is pretty normal that we are stable during this time of the year. I'd also point out that we will see a decline coming at the end of October into the early portion of November as the migrant center outside of town closes and the large majority of students who are residing out there do relocate typically out of state or into Mexico. So I'll keep you posted on when we see that transition happen. So I can stop there and see if you have any questions at that before I get into some of the specifics around class sizes in the secondary setting.
Any board questions? Okay, why don't you continue then? and
All
we'll-
right. So again, I had a specific request from one of the members a month ago to be able to bring back and break down some of the specifics around class sizes in the secondary level. It's commented on, has been commented on that there's some really large classes, and you will see that there are some numbers which are certainly high. And you'll also see that there are some numbers that are low as well. So I've organized this by department, by course and department. So I'll run through these and try to do it quickly. So the first, we're looking at Dixon High first, and the English department is the first department we're looking at. So in English 9, it's a high average for that course. It's 34. The largest class is 36, and the smallest is 31. So that is a course that has a high average, and there's no super low size there. English 10, the course average is 30.6. The largest individual section is 36. The smallest is 26. In English 10 honors, the average, and there's 2 sections there, is 34.5. The larger of the 2 is 37. The smaller is 32. You will see in most, not all, but most of the honors, well, it's only English 10 is the only honors, but the AP classes typically have larger class averages in them. That's been the norm for a long, long time. And like I say, there are a couple of exceptions. It happens in most places, actually. English 11, your course average is 28.8. The largest section is at 33. The smallest is at 20. I'll talk in a minute about how you can have such a range of a high of 33 and a low of 20. I'll speak to that. The Public Service Academy, that program always runs large. So 2 periods of that, each at 36. So your average is 36 there. And AP Literature is 35.3. There are 3 periods of that, if I remember correctly, the high 37 and the low 33. So when you take all these courses and average them out, the department average in English is 32.5. Okay. I did pull out the English language development classes from English. In one way, they're grouped together, but this is not the English class for students there. So you have just 2 courses over there, one with 18 students and one with 16 students. So again, not appropriate to put them in the English average, but did want to tease them out for you. Social science. So you do not have 9th grade social science in the high school. So you begin in 10th grade with world history. The course average 29.3. You see pretty balanced. The high is 31, the low is 26. Advanced placement world history. Again, this phenomenon of the AP and honors being larger. 34.7 is the average, 36. I think there's 3 courses there. 36 is the high and 34 is the low. US history, which is taught to 11th graders, 28 is the course average. The high is 31, the low is 26. AP US history, 30.5 is the average. 2 sections, 31 and 30. Public Service Academy, just like it was up in English, at 36. Civics, which is taught in 12th grade, class average of 36, the high, class average 33, the high is 36, the low is 28. And then AP Government, course average is 28, 2 periods, high is 30, the low is 26. So you see the department average in social science is 31.0 on the nose. In math, you've got quite a few courses here. And your first one is Integrated Math 1. So your course average there is 30. the high being 35, the low being 29. Integrated Math 1A and Integrated Math 1B are specialized courses, almost exclusively, if not for students with disabilities. They're co-taught by a math teacher and a special education teacher. I don't have high and low. Any space where there's no high and low, it's because there's only one period of that class. So in 1A, you've got 32 students. In 1B, you've got 20 students. In Integrated Math 2, so this is largely sophomores, but not exclusively. Course average is 30. The high is 37, the low is 19. Again, I'll talk about why such a discrepancy there in a moment. Integrated Math 3 is 28.8, 36 is the high, 22 is the low, another one with a big discrepancy there. Math for Calculus, 32 is the course average, 36 high, 28 low. AP Calculus, one period at 32, AP Stats, one period at 35. Statistics at one period of stats, regular stats at 35. And so your department average in math is 29.7. Okay. You have 2 math support classes at Dixon High School, IM1 and IM2. There are 2 periods of IM1. They average 21, each has 21 students in it. And there's 1 IM2 support. So the average for the support classes is 23.3. Again, I pulled the support classes out of the average, the department average, because as you can see, they do skew smaller. In science, your department average, you'll see down here, is 30.8. I will note that there are 3 classes that are taught out of the ag department: ag chem, animal science, and sustainable ag biology. Why are they included in the science cluster in the science department? Because students are earning their science credits toward graduation through these. So they're categorized as science courses, while they're also ag courses, but the primary function of them is in science. So Living Earth is primarily 9th graders. Average 29.6, high 39, low 24. Chem and the environment, primarily sophomores, 30.8 is the average. You see 36 and 25. Physiology, primarily juniors, some seniors, 31.0. 33 is high, 29 the low. AP biology, 30 is the average, 2 sections, 38 is the high, 22 is the low. Physics honors, and this is kind of a blend of honors and non-honors, 2 sections, 28.5. Again, you see some gap, 34 and 23. There's only 1 period of AP environmental science that only has 20 students in it. Ag chemistry has 2 sections. Is that right? Anyway, the average is 28. I think it's 2 sections. Animal science, 1 section at 25. Sustainable ag bio has 3 sections. High is 31, low is 26, average of 28.3. So the department average in science is 30.8 students per class. PE, you'll see at both Dixon High School and C.A. Jacobs are by far the highest class averages. That's typical at secondary schools, I think, across the country. Just 4 classes. PE 9, average 42.7, the high is 50, the low 39. PE 10, 12, there are just 2 periods of that. 35 is the average. They both are at that. Weightlifting 34.7, 3 periods. That's high 38, low 31. 2 periods of yoga. Average 36, just 1 at 37, 1 at 36. So you see that much larger average in PE of 39. In a language, you see the department average is 30.7. Spanish 1's running large at 35.3. You can see 36 and 34, the high and the low. Spanish 2 running lower at 27.5. I got those backwards. It's a 29 high and a 26 low. Spanish 3 at 32. You see the 35 and 29 there. Spanish 4 and Spanish Native 1. There are 3 periods of Spanish 4 combined with 3 periods of Native Spanish 1. There's only about 10 students, if I remember correctly, taking Spanish 4 overall. So that's not enough to justify its own period. So those students are blended in with the Native 1 speakers. So 3 periods of that, 27 is the average, 30 the high, 22 the low. Native Spanish 2, there are only 2 periods of that. You can see that runs very large at 37.5. There's 1 period of Native 3 at 30 and 1 period of AP Spanish at 18. So again, that department average comes in at 30.7. Fine arts, there's about a zillion different fine arts classes. So I just said various here, and I can give you a list of what courses are in there without running through all of the data. But the average size in the fine arts is at 27.7. The largest size is at 38, and the lowest is at 10. So what is in the fine arts world? Ceramics, drawing, our floral and advanced floral program also earns art credit while it's taught out in the ag world. It is qualifies as an art, band, and choir. So you've got a combination of ceramics 2 and AP ceramics that is that 10, right? So that's 1 period. Again, it's got 2 courses in it. Ceramics 2 and AP ceramics, just for a total of 10. The class that's at 38 is symphonic band. And that's not an atypical number for a band class, although band overall, our numbers have come down. Career Tech Ed courses. So what's involved there? Again, it's a big variety. The computer tech class that 9th graders take, computer science, which are upper level classes, including an AP computer science class, the multimedia classes, the culinary arts classes, the ag mechanics classes, and the ag practices, ag leadership classes are all in there. Again, the largest is 38, the smallest is 10. Average across that department, 26.2. So you see it's in these elective areas that we tend to run at the smaller averages. Health is a 9th grade class. It partners up with a computer tech that's in career, doesn't fit into a department. So the average of those 5 periods is 33.2, 35 being the high and 31 being the low. I put AVID in the mix, high profile program. You've got 2 periods of AVID for each grade level. So you can see averages 27.5, 25, 21 in 11th grade, 23.5 in 12th grade. The largest is in 9th grade. They got the overall highest average, so it makes sense. They're at 33 and 22. You see the smallest is at 18 here in AVID 11. So I think that covers it for Dixon High. Yes, that covers it for Dixon High. So the long-awaited explanation of why in the same course can you have 1 period that can be so high and 1 period that can be so low. So let me give you one of those examples here where it's kind of glaring. So let's talk about integrated math 2. So overall for the course, it has an average of 30. It's got a high of 37 and a low of 19. So an 18 student difference between high and low. So that really is due to just the quirkiness of a master schedule. And you saw another probably 5 or 6 that had that 12 to 18 discrepancy between the high and the low. And so as classes are loading, you will typically find imbalances of this nature across a course that has 5 or 6 or more sections. Oftentimes students are, Dixon High School has a lot of singleton courses where there's only 1 period of something offered, a lot of doubleton courses where there's only 2 periods of a specific course offered, and then there are a lot of classes where there's only 3. So that confines your master schedule options for students to fill. And so it is not unusual to see these discrepancies on this basis. The other thing that is a complication to the master schedule balancing at Dixon High School is the 0 period attendance, the number of students in 0 period, and then the number of students in 6 period. Several of our largest periods of the largest enrollment in any specific course are in 0 period. We don't offer a full range of courses there necessarily. And so it's not atypical to see larger averages in 0 period. And then we also typically will see some of our smaller classes in 6 period at the end of the day. A lot of students like to go 0 through 5th. A good number of our seniors like to go 0 through 4th and be done at lunch. So oftentimes you'll see the afternoon numbers not fill to the same level as some of the morning numbers, despite everybody's best effort in terms of counselors and administration to try to get those classes balanced. There still will be these imbalances around. I've been messing around with master schedules beginning in 1998 as an assistant principal. I did them as a principal for 8 years. I've done them as an HR person and superintendent ever since. And these anomalies of these big differences between sections in a particular course are not unusual at all. So I'm going to stop talking about Dixon High and see if you have any questions specific to it.
Any board questions? I got a text, Brian. I think Kim had a comment about some of the middle school numbers that you previously gave. She thought may have been not accurate. Can we let
on students in the intensive learning center? Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that was straight out of Aries. So
I figured it was. I will make sure it gets corrected. There's a dozen. There's 12 of them.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay, any questions or comments on the Dixon High numbers? Okay.
You know, our obligation contractually, and I should have started this, our obligation contractually at this time of the year is to have a school-wide average of 31.0 or lower. And while we certainly see departments that are right on the nose or lower, we also see departments that are higher. English at 32.5. Where's another one? Maybe that's the only one. PE certainly over that 31. And the language in our contract provides for a school-wide average. And so when you put all of these things together, then we are under that 31 to 1 average. And I apologize, I had that calculated and I didn't include it here. So I'll have to share that with you folks tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
Any other Dixon High questions or comments?
Any other Dixon High questions? No.
Otherwise, I'll jump into CA, which is much less data to report, both fewer students and a smaller range of courses. So the same thing, the average, the high, and the low. I'm just going to focus on the average. You can take those highs and lows yourself. So in language arts 6, course average 29.2, and 7, 31.7, and in 8th grade 30.4. So you see the department average at 30.4. I would point out, you just see one of those, 10 student differences between high and low here. And again, that just is part of the vagaries of that master schedule development. As at Dixon High, I pulled ELD out. We do have a significantly larger population of students in ELD at CA Jacobs. So, 14, only one period of ELD 1. There's 2 periods of ELD 2 and 2 of ELD 3. So the average for those 5 courses comes out to 23.8. In social sciences, you see 27.8, 30.3, 29.7. So again, a department average of 29.3. In math, you've got a little more variety in courses here. So Common Core 6 at 29.2, Common Core 7 at 31.6, Common Core 7-8, that's an accelerated class that's at 32. Common Core 8 is at 30.7, and Integrated Math 1 is for 8th graders who are in the accelerated program, and that's one period of that at 29 students. So again, a department average of 30.4. I did pull the math support classes out of the math numbers again, so the numbers would not be skewed low. You have 2 periods of support 8, 1 of 6 and 7. So you see the department average, the course average there of 13.0 for the support classes. In science, you see again 29.2, 32.3, 30.6, department average of 30.7. So you see 30.4, 29.3, 30.4. The department averages at CA are really very similar. Art is running large over at CA this year. You've got 2 periods of Art 6, which average at 32.5, 3 periods of Art 7-8, which average at 34.7. So the department average 33.8. Band is running small at CA Jacobs compared to years past. There's 1 period of Band 6 with 19 students, 2 periods of Band 7-8. That average is at 22.5. So the band average is 21.3 overall at CA Jacobs. Avid, 1 period of each grade level. The average for that 3-year sequence is 26. You have 2 periods of leadership, 1 for the 6th and 7th graders at 29, 1 for the 8th graders at 20. So that averages out at 24.5. And there's 1 class of yearbook that's at 29. So again, we are under that 31 to 1 ratio, more comfortably at CA Jacobs than we are at Dixon High School. And you're not seeing, the high, there's not as many 35s, 36s at CA as there are at Dixon High School, certainly. And you've got greater balance. The discrepancies between a high in a course and a low in a course are fewer, they're smaller, and that again is in large part due to a much simpler master schedule. You don't have singletons and doubletons and tripletons the way that you do at the high school. So any questions on CA Jacobs sizes?
Any board questions on CA Jacobs? Okay, seeing none.
That was a lot of numbers. Is there any We want to kick to public comment, Luke?
Yeah,
or-
no board questions or comments on those numbers? Okay, let's go out to public comment on the update on enrollment and staffing numbers.
Stephanie is up first.
Good evening. I had my hand up for the high school numbers, so I'm not sure if we can go back to those by any
Yeah.
chance. And I'm merely asking, although I am a staff member at the district, I also have a child enrolled. And so my concerns are a parent relation at this moment. So I am looking at the math numbers that you have presented. And I'm asking if Brian is at all possible if he can put back up that math slide, because my question was, you had like math for calculus, and did that encompass IM3C and pre-calculus? What is the breakdown for that? Because it's not very apparent. I'd like some clarification for that, please.
All right, let me get my reports here.
And I would have asked when you had that up originally, that's when my hand was up. So I apologize that I'm asking. you to go back.
No problem.
No problem. We can put that back up. That's not an issue.
Thanks, Mark, for letting me
You got that
share.
question? Let's get the questions, as long as you understand the question, Brian. Let's get the questions.
I get the question, and I'm just going to put that back up while I check my reports. Yes.
Okay.
Continue,
you, Stephanie.
please.
Okay, Kathy.
So actually, I have a comment that goes quite a ways back, but this was the first chance for me to say this. And I want to clarify something both for the school board and for parents in the community in regards of where the teachers are. Dixon teachers care immensely about their students. And if there's any sort of confusion at all about that in the community, I want to clarify that the only reason a Dixon teacher would teach remotely once we go to hybrid is for accommodations that require their health or the health of their family. And I think both the school board and the community understands that as something that, you know, they're not choosing to be gone from your kids and your students because they don't feel like coming to school. There's a legitimate reason for why they are choosing to do that. And I just want to reiterate that our teachers are really committed to doing right by the students. And I wanted to put that out there so there was no confusion about it at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks,
Okay, any more comments on the numbers from Dixon High or CA Jacobs?
I'm seeing none.
Okay, so we'll close public comment on this. And Brian, if you want to answer Stephanie's question.
I sure will. Good catch, Ms. Roop. In putting all this together, I actually missed the pre-calculus courses. So everything else was included. There are 2 periods of pre-calculus. There's a total of 42 students in them. So that
it's showing English. Can you scroll?
Oh, sorry. Yep. Sorry. I was messing with my mouse. So I did miss pre-calculus in this. So there are 2 sections of pre-calculus, a total of 42 students. So the average for that course is 21. So that would bring that department average of 29.7 down further from where it currently is. So the math for calculus is that IM, well, yeah, it's math for calculus. So I don't know if that clarifies. I apologize. I had that oversight. But it actually does just 42 students between 2 periods, average of 21.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Sorry about that.
Okay, so let's move on to approval of resolution number 20-1639, adopting a revised conflict of interest code.
Yes, thank you. So this is a requirement under government code that we identify the specific positions within the district that are subject to the conflict of interest regulations. And so what you have in your backup tonight is just the updated list. We had in our previous document, we had some positions that were removed. So our previous document had some positions that no longer exist. And we added, similarly, we added a couple of positions which are new since the last time we updated. So just looking for your approval of this resolution, and this gets forwarded on to Solano County, not the Office of Education, actual Solano County. So take any questions that you have.
Okay, do we have any board questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, let's go out. Are there any public questions or comments on this resolution?
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve resolution 20-1639, adopting a revised conflict of interest code?
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Lloyd,
Aye.
Jewel,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Catlin,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11B1, service agreement with Nyhart. Ms. Stovall.
Good evening, President Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Dolan. This evening, we are here to ask for your approval of a service agreement with Nyhart for a full and interim GASB 75 actuarial update. Nyhart has completed this type of report for us in the past. However, we're bringing this item to you as an information, discussion, and action instead of a consent, because the product of this service agreement is an analysis of our financial liability, and it's important when we're developing our budget and assessing our fiscal health. Because of our current fiscal situation, we wanted to make sure that we were able to bring this to you as a discussion item. So why do we need this service agreement? So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, also known as GASB, requires that when an employer provides benefits to both active and retired retirees through the same plan, that the benefits to the retirees should be segregated and measured independently. So the benefits for our retirees are often referred to as OPEB, other post-employment benefits. And in this particular contract, in this service agreement, Nyhart will develop a report to ensure that we're in compliance with GASB 75, which is the requirement to assess and measure those benefits for our OPEB liability. Our OPEB liability, our liability for post-employment benefits, is unfunded. So what that means is that every year we need to pull from our regular budget to pay for these benefits for our retirees. So through this service agreement, we will be able to get an assessment of what that liability is. We'll get an assessment for this past year, and I'm sorry, for this year, and then this agreement is also for next year. What questions do you have? Luke, you're muted.
Thank you. Any board questions? Yeah. Okay, seeing no board questions, let's go out for any public questions on this item.
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the service agreement with Nyhart?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Lloyd,
Aye.
Jewel,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Catlin,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Okay, item 11C1, approval of the Williams quarterly report.
Good evening again. So we'll ask for your approval of the Williams quarterly report reflecting no complaints filed for the most recent months.
Thank you. Any board questions? Seeing none, let's go out to public comment. Any public questions on the Williams quarterly report?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the Williams quarterly report?
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Lloyd,
Aye.
Yule,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Catlin,
Aye.
and I'm I as well. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we are to agenda items for future meetings. Does anyone have a request for an agenda item? Seeing none, any board announcements? Seeing none, coming events, November 5th is the next board meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.